Beneath the blazing Arizona sun, where the earth is cracked and dry as bone, lie tunnels that never sleep. They were carved by men chasing gold, copper, and silver. But many never came back. Their voices still whispered through the dust. Their footsteps echo in darkness no light dares enter. And if you ever wander close to one of Arizona's haunted mines, you might hear the sound of a pickaxe still striking stone long after the miner's heart stopped beating. Tonight, we descend deep into those forgotten caverns. These are the 25 most haunted mines in Arizona that hide the dead beneath. Keep your lantern close, and your courage closer. The Vulture Mine, nestled in the harsh desert landscape near Wickenburg, Arizona, is a place where history and horror intertwine. Founded in the 1860s, it quickly became one of the most productive gold mines in the territory, producing more than $200 million worth of gold by the time it closed. Yet for all its riches, the mine carries a darker legacy, one of death, betrayal, and the restless spirits of those who never left. Visitors and locals alike whisper of the mine's haunted reputation, claiming that the wealth extracted from its shafts came at a far higher price than the gold alone. The story begins with Henry Wickenburg, a prospector who discovered gold in the desert and laid the foundation for what would become the Vulture Mine in its heyday. The mine attracted fortune seekers from across the American West, men desperate for a chance at wealth. The desert was unforgiving, but gold was enough to draw people into its scorching grip. Miners toiled long hours under the blazing sun, digging shafts that descended deep into the earth, following veins of glittering ore. Life was brutal, dangerous, and often short. Lawlessness followed quickly. The mine operated far from any real authority, and disputes over ore were common. Stealing a nugget, or even a handful of dust, could be a death sentence. At the center of the mine's notorious reputation stood the hanging tree, alone, mesquite, where those caught taking or from the claims were executed. Eyewitness accounts describe miners hanged in plain sight, their bodies left swinging for days as a warning to others. Families of the accused were often powerless to intervene, and the desert heat and scavenging animals left the corpses in gruesome decay. Despite, or perhaps because of this climate of fear, the Vulture Mine thrived. But those who toiled within its tunnels carried with them a growing unease. Workers spoke of strange occurrences in the shafts, shadows moving where none should be, whispers echoing from empty corridors, and a persistent feeling of being watched. The mine's violent history seemed to embed itself into the very walls, a residue of fear and anger that refused to dissipate even after the last nugget of gold was removed. Today, the mine sits abandoned, its wooden shacks and metal structures slowly succumbing to desert rot. Yet the stories of hauntings persist, drawing paranormal investigators, curious travelers, and those seeking a thrill. Visitors report hearing the sounds of heavy boots stomping across the dry, dusty ground, as though miners still patrol the shafts and/or bins. Some claim to hear the clinking of metal chains and the scraping of tools, despite the fact that no one is there. The desert wind seems to carry whispers, faint cries for mercy, that rise and fall like echoes from another time. Ghost hunters who spend the night in the abandoned structures describe some of the most chilling experiences. In the dark of night, when the desert is silent, except for the distant coyote calls, a voice can suddenly pierce the quiet. "Don't let me hang." The scream is desperate, raw with terror, and it often seems to come from deep within the mine's tunnels. Those present swear they feel a presence nearby, something unseen, moving through the dust and shadows. No one ever sees the speaker, yet the voice is undeniable, resonating with the pain and fear of a man facing his final moments. Some visitors report other phenomena, doors opening and closing by themselves, lanterns swinging without wind, and fleeting glimpses of figures in tattered miners' clothing, vanishing when approached. Cold spots appear in the middle of the desert heat, and compasses spin erratically near certain shafts. Many believe these experiences are tied to the countless deaths that occurred here, particularly the violent executions at the hanging tree. The spirits, it seems, are trapped not by unfinished business with the living, but by the terror and injustice they endured in life. Local legends tell of one miner in particular known only as Thomas M., who was caught stealing a chunk of ore in 1882. According to the story, he begged his captors for mercy, promising to repay the gold 100-fold. He was dragged to the mesquite, tied with rough hemp rope, and left swinging as the sun beat down. The wind that day carried his final scream across the desert, and some say it never stopped. Visitors claim that, on certain nights, when the wind howls just right through the empty shafts, Thomas's voice can still be heard, pleading and terrified, a permanent echo of his final moments. Despite its fearsome reputation, the Vulture Mine continues to attract explorers. Some come for history, some for thrill-seeking, and others for a more personal reason, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Yet nearly all leave with the same uneasy feeling that the past is alive here, that the desert itself remembers the cruelty and desperation of those who toiled and died. The mine's riches were extracted long ago, but its true treasure is the lingering presence of the dead, the voices that will not rest, and the lessons about greed and mortality written into the very soil. The rusted equipment, broken cabins, and wooden beams seem inert, yet there is movement where none should be. A faint shuffle in the dust, the clink of chains carried by the wind, a scream echoing from deep within the shafts. The desert air grows heavy, as if warning visitors to respect the land and the lives it once consumed. The Vulture Mine stands as a monument to ambition and its cost. The gold it produced built fortunes and fueled dreams, but it also stained the desert with human suffering. Those who dare to walk its grounds today are not alone. The spirits of the miners linger, their stories etched into every grain of sand and every shadowed shaft. The boots that stomp in the dust, the chains that rattle, the desperate cries for mercy. All are reminders that some histories cannot be buried. Some deaths demand to be remembered. The Copper Queen Mine, carved deep into the hills of Bisbee, Arizona, is a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. Once a booming operation that produced vast quantities of copper, it now stands as both a monument to human ingenuity and a chilling reminder of the lives sacrificed beneath the earth. Visitors descend into its winding tunnels, expecting a glimpse of mining history, but many leave with a sense that the mine has more to show than artifacts or rusted tools. The mine began operation in the late 19th century, drawing prospectors, laborers, and dreamers from across the United States. Its shafts tunneled far beneath the hills, twisting in labyrinthine paths that seemed endless even to the miners who worked them. Conditions were harsh. Rockfalls, gas pockets, and unpredictable cave-ins were constant threats. Over the decades, countless men toiled in these narrow tunnels, many never to see daylight again. The mine's history is not just one of copper and machinery. It is also a chronicle of danger, suffering, and lingering spirits. Tourists today arrive eager for the underground tour, passing through the town's quaint streets and stepping into the mine's cool, shadowed entrance. Guides lead them along the narrow walkways, explaining the machinery, the tools, and the process of extracting the valuable ore. Yet once the lights dim and the group moves deeper, the atmosphere shifts. The air grows damp and heavy. Cold drafts snake through the tunnels, and the faint smell of earth and metal fills every corner. Many visitors report feeling an inexplicable presence, a sensation that someone or something is walking just behind them. It is in this darkness that the stories of the mine's ghosts emerge. Former workers and longtime locals speak of the gray miner, a spectral figure who roams the tunnels carrying a flickering lantern. He is described as wearing a faded uniform, dusty and worn, the kind worn by miners of the early 20th century. Witnesses say he moves silently, his steps echoing faintly against the stone walls, yet no living miner can be seen nearby. Some claim that, when they turn to look directly at him, he vanishes, dissolving into the shadows or merging with the rock itself. The gray miner is said to appear most often near the site of one of the mine's worst tragedies. Decades ago, a cavern buried 12 men alive deep within the tunnels. Their bodies were never recovered, leaving a scar beneath the earth that never healed. Those who have encountered the gray miner report that he often lingers near that section, his lantern swaying as though searching for something, perhaps the lost men, perhaps his own peace. Guides and miners alike claim that the air grows colder in his presence, and the tunnels seem to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, like the mine itself is resonating with sorrow. Many stories describe encounters that defy explanation. One former miner recalled leaving his equipment behind and heading toward the exit when he saw a shadowy figure in a narrow passage. The lantern flickered, casting elongated shadows on the walls. He froze, heart hammering, and the figure slowly raised a hand in greeting before vanishing into the rock face. Another visitor described walking through a particularly long tunnel when the lights suddenly dimmed and a cold wind rushed past him, carrying what sounded like whispered voices. He turned to see the faint outline of a man in gray, standing as still as stone, before he too disappeared. Even the guides acknowledged that the mind can behave strangely. Sometimes the mind calls to you, one admitted, his voice low and serious, and sometimes it doesn't let go. Visitors often report a sensation of being watched, hearing faint echoes of boots on stone, or catching glimpses of shapes out of the corner of their eye. Some speak of a chilling sensation of someone brushing past them in a passageway, only to find no one there. The mind is alive with memory, and memory can linger as energy long after the people themselves have gone. Photographers and paranormal investigators have tried to document the gray miner. Many claim their cameras and equipment malfunction when they approach the tunnels at night. Photos sometimes show faint gray shapes or streaks of light, never clear, always suggestive. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint metallic clinks or the distant echo of a lantern swinging, though nothing can be seen on video. These occurrences add to the lore, drawing thrill seekers as well as those genuinely curious about the unexplained. Local residents tell visitors to respect the mine and its history. The Copper Queen is not just a tourist attraction. It is a resting place for those who toiled and died beneath its hills. The tragedies of cave-ins, accidents, and lost lives have left an imprint, a persistent echo of the dangers that miners faced daily. It is said that those who treat the mine lightly may feel its presence more acutely, as though the gray miner himself warns against disrespect. Despite the eerie reputation, the mine continues to operate as a historical site. Visitors walk its shafts, see the old tools, and descend into the darkness where the ghosts of the past linger. Some come away exhilarated, others uneasy, but almost everyone senses that the Copper Queen is more than a relic. The air carries whispers of labor long past. The rock walls hold the memory of those who never returned. And the lantern of the gray miner swings silently in the shadows, guiding or warning those who dare to enter. At night, when the town sleeps and the desert wind sweeps over Bisbee, the mine rests quietly above, but underground, the tunnels remain a labyrinth of memory and sorrow. The gray miner continues his rounds, his lantern swaying, boots clinking softly in rhythm with a world that no longer exists. Visitors who spend the night in the tunnels sometimes wake with a chill, convinced they felt a hand on their shoulder or saw movement in the corner of the passageway. The Copper Queen mine stands as a testament to ambition, labor, and human cost. Its tunnels are deep, twisting, and dark, yet they are filled with life of another kind, the life of memory, of spirits unable to leave, of men whose stories echo through rock and dust. Those who enter are advised to listen, to respect the mine, and to remember that beneath the surface lies more than copper. Beneath the bustling streets of Tombstone, Arizona, where tourists flock to see reenactments of the OK Corral and historic saloons, lies a darker, almost forgotten world, the Grand Central Mine. Unlike the town above, which celebrates gunfights and frontier legends, the mine holds the memory of backbreaking labor, danger, and the countless men who risked everything for silver and the promise of wealth. Today, it is more than an abandoned excavation. It is a place where the past refuses to rest, and visitors sometimes catch glimpses of a spectral workforce that has never left the shafts. The Grand Central Mine was founded in the late 1800s, during the height of Tombstone's silver boom. Miners carved tunnels into the hillsides, following veins of precious ore deep beneath the earth. Life underground was grueling. Miners faced collapses, suffocating dust, and sudden floods, yet the promise of silver kept them going. Wages were low, hours long, and safety almost non-existent. Many perished in the darkness, and over time, a reputation grew. The mine was as dangerous as it was profitable, and those who survived carried with them the weight of the dead. Locals have long claimed that the ground beneath Tombstone itself seems restless. On quiet nights, far from the tourist throngs, the earth trembles subtly, as if the miners who died below are still digging, still shifting rock and ore in their eternal labor. Witnesses describe standing on the streets and feeling a faint vibration through the soles of their boots, an almost imperceptible pulse that comes and goes without explanation. Some say it is the memory of centuries of toil, encoded into the very soil, a warning that the work of the past never truly ends. Inside the mine, those who venture for tours or paranormal investigations report more unsettling phenomena. Many have heard faint hymns echoing through the tunnels, soft and haunting, as if ghostly miners are offering prayers for deliverance. The hymns are not full songs, but fragments, a murmured Lord, give me strength, a whispered bless this work, repeated endlessly in the cool, damp air. Those who hear them describe a profound sense of sorrow and devotion, a weight that presses on the chest even as the tunnels remain empty of flesh and bone. Thermal cameras used by researchers and ghost hunters have captured even stranger occurrences. In some instances, glowing silhouettes of men appear, moving slowly through the shafts, their hands gripping invisible or carts. They push the carts uphill, as if completing tasks left unfinished decades ago. No one can touch them, and no physical evidence of movement accompanies their passage. Yet the recordings are consistent, heat signatures climbing, descending, vanishing suddenly when the miner reaches a corner, leaving the tunnel cold and silent once again. Visitors who explore the mine often sense these presences before they see anything. Sudden drops in temperature sweep through narrow corridors, icy drafts that have no source and seem to follow those who wander too deep. Some claim to hear the scraping of picks against stone or the dull thud of unseen hammers. Others feel the brush of a hand or the weight of a shoulder behind them, only to turn and find nothing there. Tour guides admit that these experiences are not uncommon. The mine has a way of speaking to you, one explained. And sometimes it doesn't let go until you've acknowledged it. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a team of paranormal investigators in the early 2000s. They were deep in the mine, cameras and sensors capturing temperature, movement, and sound, when a sudden chill swept through the passage. Without warning, the lights flickered, and on the thermal display, dozens of glowing figures appeared, their shapes indistinct but undeniably human. The investigators reported that they could feel the effort, the strain, as if the miners were physically pushing the heavy or carts uphill. One of the team whispered a prayer, and the figures slowed, then vanished, leaving only a lingering cold and the faint echo of hymn-like murmurs. Local lore suggests that these spirits are bound to the mine by unfinished labor. Many died before they could reach the surface with their wealth, or were trapped in collapses that left them buried in darkness. Unlike other hauntings tied to vengeance or tragedy, the Grand Central spirits are said to be tireless workers, endlessly repeating their tasks. Some claim that at certain times of night, if the temperature drops suddenly and the wind carries no sound of the town above, you can feel them, a presence pressing against your back, urging you to acknowledge their endless toil. Historians note that the mine's expansion and the density of the underground network created a labyrinth, where it was easy for a miner to become lost or trapped. Over the decades, dozens of bodies were never recovered. The mine's legacy of death is woven into its tunnels, and some believe that those who died are not truly at rest. The faint hymns, the glowing figures, the sudden chills, all are interpreted as echoes of the lives and labors interrupted, a spectral workforce continuing long after the silver veins were exhausted. Even casual visitors sense it. Tourists descending on guided trips often remark on the sudden heaviness of the air, the feeling of being watched, or the subtle tremor beneath their feet. Photographs sometimes capture misty shapes in the corners of tunnels, inexplicable blurs that vanish when approached. The Grand Central Mine has become a symbol of Tombstone's dual legacy, the glamour and legend of the Old West above ground, and the relentless, hidden toil of those who dug below. It is a place where history is tangible, where every tunnel holds memory, sweat, and sorrow. The spirits are not violent, but their presence is undeniable, a reminder that labor and death leave marks that time cannot erase. On nights when the desert wind is still and the moon hangs low over Tombstone, the mine seems almost to breathe. The ground quivers slightly, the air chills, and if you listen closely, faint hymns rise from deep below. Glowing figures push imaginary carts uphill, their effort eternal, their song endless. Those who enter the tunnels feel it, sense it, and know that the Grand Central Mine is more than stone and copper. It is a living memory, a testament to the lives that built Tombstone, and to the spirits that will not be forgotten. The Silver King Mine, perched near the small town of Superior, Arizona, is known for its rich veins of silver, and the curse that seems to follow anyone who dares to venture too far underground. Established in the late 19th century, the mine quickly became one of the most productive silver operations in the territory. Yet the wealth it produced came at a price far greater than gold or silver could ever measure. From the beginning, tragedy seemed inseparable from its walls, and the stories of death, betrayal, and restless spirits have persisted long after the last miner left its tunnels. According to legend, the mine's darkest chapter began when a miner stumbled upon a vein of almost pure silver. The discovery should have brought fortune to the group of partners working the claim. Instead, greed consumed one of them entirely. In a violent frenzy, he murdered his partners in the darkness of the mine, intent on keeping the secret of the vein for himself. The walls still bear the scars of their struggle, deep scratches and streaks of rusted ore that seem almost like warnings etched into the rock. His victory was short-lived. Not long after the murders, the man's body was discovered, grotesquely mutilated, his face frozen in an expression of absolute horror. Locals say that no one could explain what killed him. Some suggested revenge by the spirits of the men he had slain. Others whispered of a supernatural force guarding the silver. Regardless, the incident marked the beginning of the mine's reputation as cursed, a place where wealth and death walked hand in hand. Over the decades, miners and explorers alike reported strange and unsettling occurrences. Some spoke of footsteps echoing through empty shafts, the sound of picks striking rock when no one was there. Others claimed to hear whispers that seemed to rise directly from the rock itself, soft but insistent, repeating the murderer's name over and over, a warning, a plea, or perhaps a curse. The whispers are often accompanied by a sudden chill, an icy wind that snakes through the narrow tunnels, even when the desert above is still and hot. Modern visitors have added to the mine's growing legend. Paranormal investigators exploring the abandoned shafts frequently report strange lights. On some nights, a single candle appears to burn in the darkness, its flickering flame casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. Yet, when they attempt to approach, it vanishes, leaving only the lingering smell of smoke and the cold, oppressive air of the mine. The candle seems to appear without source, a manifestation of the past or the restless spirit of the miner whose greed triggered the bloodshed. Several explorers have recounted more direct encounters with the supernatural. One team of researchers in the 1990s ventured deep into the main shaft, recording audio and video. In the stillness, they heard a soft, deliberate whisper, the same name repeated endlessly, growing louder, then fading. At the same time, their equipment recorded inexplicable fluctuations in temperature, plunging suddenly to near freezing in the middle of the arid desert. Some claim that the walls themselves seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding as if alive, responding to the fear and awe of the intruders. Other reports describe shadowy figures glimpsed in the corners of the tunnels. Explorers have seen movements just beyond the edge of their flashlight beams, shapes that vanish when illuminated. Some describe the figure of a man standing perfectly still, face obscured, watching them as they move through the mine. Whether these are manifestations of the original murderer, the men he killed, or some other presence entirely is unknown. Locals simply advise caution and respect. The Silver King isn't a place to anger, one old miner said, or it won't let you go. The mine's reputation has made it both feared and irresistible. Treasure hunters, hoping to uncover lost veins of silver, ignore the warnings at their peril. Many who enter report feeling a presence, a weight that follows them through the twisting corridors and deep shafts. Others hear whispers, see flickering candlelight, or feel cold fingers brush against their skin. Some leave shaken but alive, while a few vanish from the historical records entirely, swallowed by the tunnels or the legends themselves. Historians note that accidents were not uncommon, even apart from the supernatural. Caverns, gas pockets, and sudden rockfalls claimed lives in the mine regularly. Yet the stories of ghostly lights, whispers from the rock, and apparitions of past miners persist, suggesting that the mine's past has left a permanent mark. Unlike other abandoned mines, where silence prevails, the Silver King mine seems to hum with memory and menace. Some believe the mine is a warning about greed and betrayal. The original murderer's face, frozen in terror, has become a symbol of the consequences of avarice. The whispers and candlelight may be reminders that no one escapes the past. Others interpret the phenomena as evidence that the miners who died within the tunnels never truly left, bound to the mine by unfinished work, violent death, or the lingering curse of their betrayer. Visitors who brave the shafts today often speak of an oppressive stillness that precedes any strange occurrence. The air grows heavy, the light seems dimmer, and even the most skeptical feel the weight of history pressing in. Some report seeing shapes flicker in their peripheral vision, feeling a tug at their sleeve, or hearing their own names whispered in tones that are unmistakably human, yet impossibly distant. Every tale, every whispered warning, reinforces the sense that the mine is alive with memory, never truly silent, and always watchful. The Silver King mine endures as a chilling testament to the dark side of human ambition. Its tunnels are more than empty rock and old silver veins. They are corridors of memory, echoes of violence, and the lingering presence of those who died violently or in fear. The whispers, the candlelight, the shadowy forms, all are reminders that some histories refuse to rest. They demand recognition, respect, and caution. The United Verde mine, perched high above the steep hills of Jerome, Arizona, is more than a relic of the copper boom. It is a monument to human ambition, tragedy, and restless spirits. Jerome itself earned the infamous nickname, the wickedest town in the West, not solely because of saloons and lawlessness, but because of the dangerous work that fueled its wealth. Deep beneath the streets and crumbling buildings, the United Verde mine sprawls through the mountains like a shadow of industry, its tunnels carved by the hands of thousands who risked everything and often lost everything in the pursuit of copper. From its opening in the late 19th century, the mine was a marvel of engineering and a testament to the voracious appetite for copper in America. Tunnels stretched for miles beneath the jagged hills, following veins of metal through rock that seemed unyielding. Miners worked long hours in darkness, using picks, shovels, and primitive explosives to extract the ore. Gas leaks, sudden collapses, and fiery explosions were constant threats. Many perished without record, swallowed by the earth they labored to conquer. By some estimates, thousands lost their lives within the tunnels, leaving a legacy of sorrow and lingering unrest. Locals tell stories of phantom machinery echoing through the empty shafts, as if the mine itself has never shut down. The groaning of rusted gears and the distant clatter of invisible tools seem to rise from the blackened tunnels beneath the town. At times, visitors hear the unmistakable sound of carts rolling along unseen tracks, echoes of ore being transported to the surface. Some say that if you listen closely, the machinery never stops. It is a spectral reminder of the ceaseless work that consumed so many lives. Miners' voices are said to call out numbers, a ghostly roll call for the dead. Tourists and explorers have reported hearing faint shouts, sometimes just digits, recited over and over as if the spirits are counting, checking names against a list that has existed for decades. Occasionally, these voices seem to respond to conversation, murmuring a number when someone speaks their own, or calling out in a cadence that mimics the rhythm of mining work. Pick, cart, shovel, pause, repeat. The effect is chilling, a haunting testament to the discipline and routine that define life and death underground. One of the most compelling legends involves the miners who died in the catastrophic fire and gas leaks that frequently swept through the mine. Many bodies were never recovered, leaving tunnels and shafts as permanent memorials to their lives. Witnesses claim that on quiet nights, when Jerome sleeps, the mine seems almost alive. Cold drafts snake through abandoned buildings, carrying the faint scent of copper and dust. Shadows flicker across the hillsides, as though unseen workers are moving just beyond the edge of vision, completing their eternal shifts. Paranormal investigators, who explore the United Verde mine report, encounters that defy explanation. Thermal cameras sometimes detect heat signatures of figures moving in tunnels no living person could access. Audio equipment captures metallic clangs, scraping, and muffled voices. Some investigators swear they have seen miners in period uniforms, helmets, boots, and dust-streaked clothes walking silently beside them, their presence undeniable yet intangible. When approached, the figures vanish into the rock walls, leaving only the sound of a pick striking stone and the faint echo of numbers being called out. Local lore holds that the spirits remain, not out of malice, but duty. They died working the copper veins, and, in death, they continue their eternal shift, guarding the wealth they risked everything to extract. Trespassers report a tangible pressure in certain shafts, as though the spirits are aware of their presence, ensuring that the copper remains undisturbed. Some claim that those who try to remove or even touch the walls in certain tunnels are met with sudden chills, whispers, or unseen forces that push them back. The mine, it seems, has a memory, and it does not forgive intrusion lightly. The town above bears its spectral legacy as well. Jerome's streets, steep and narrow, seem to hum faintly at night, the echoes of underground activity vibrating through the foundations. Some residents speak of hearing machinery from below when no generator or construction is operating. Others claim to glimpse fleeting shadows crossing alleyways, dressed in miners' garb, vanishing as quickly as they appear. These phenomena reinforce the sense that the town and mine are inseparable. The lives lost underground continue to shape the surface world, and the past remains alive in a way that cannot be ignored. The United Verde mine's reputation has drawn adventurers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Many descend into the tunnels hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Yet nearly all report the same sensation, a feeling of being watched, guided, and even judged by the unseen laborers. The air grows heavy, the temperature drops unexpectedly, and every sound seems amplified. The scrape of a boot, the echo of a pick, the whisper of a name. Some leave exhilarated, others unnerved, but almost everyone senses that the mine remembers them, and that the spirits will not release their vigilance easily. Even today, the mine serves as a reminder of the cost of ambition. The copper extracted from its veins built wealth and fueled industry, but it came at the price of countless lives. The phantom machinery, the voices calling numbers, the cold drafts, and shadowy figures all serve as a haunting record of the men who labored and died here. Jerome's nickname, the wickedest town in the West, extends beyond saloons and lawlessness. It encompasses the human cost of extracting the resources that drove its rise. For those who wander the shafts, the lesson is clear. The United Verde mine is not merely a historical site, nor is it a relic to be disturbed. It is a place alive with memory, where the dead continue their work and the copper they died for remains under eternal guard. The echoes of machinery, the whispered roll calls, and the presence of the unseen miners are reminders that the past endures here. The mine demands respect, attention, and humility. Goldfield, Arizona, sits at the edge of the desert near Apache Junction, a town that is both history and legend. Once a bustling mining hub in the early 20th century, it thrived on the promise of gold hidden beneath the harsh desert soil. Today, it is a reconstructed ghost town, a tourist attraction with saloons, shops, and rickety wooden walkways. But beneath the colorful facades and the dusty streets lies a truth far darker: the Goldfield mine, whose shafts still echo with the lives, laughter, and labor of those who never left. The Goldfield mine was at the heart of the town's boom. Miners arrived in droves, drawn by the glittering promise of gold. They carved tunnels deep into the earth, following veins that shimmered with the precious metal. Life underground was brutal. The shafts were narrow and unstable. Lamps flickered in the suffocating darkness, and every blast of a pick carried the risk of collapse or explosion. Many men lost their lives to gas pockets, falling rocks, or the treacherous desert heat once they emerged above. Those who survived the mine carried scars, both visible and invisible, as did the town itself, which bore witness to a cycle of greed, labor, and sudden tragedy. Even after the mine closed and Goldfield fell into ruin, the energy of its labor and its losses did not fade. Tourists exploring the reconstructed town frequently report hearing sounds that should not exist. Hammers strike rhythmically, echoing from the empty shafts where no one now works. The sound is sometimes accompanied by swearing, the rough, familiar language of miners cursing a stubborn vein of rock or a misfired charge. Laughter, too, is said to drift through the tunnels, soft but clear, sometimes rising to the surface to mingle with the desert wind. Those who hear it often stop in their tracks, unsure whether they have imagined it or stepped into a memory of the past. Many visitors have claimed to see more than just sounds. Spectral figures sometimes appear in the shafts. Ghostly miners dressed in soot-streaked clothing, their faces blackened from labor. They move with purpose, digging, hauling, or examining the rock as if the mine had never closed. These apparitions are often fleeting, vanishing when approached, leaving only the faint scent of earth and metal in their wake. Some explorers report seeing them pause, turn, and regard them silently before dissolving into shadow. The haunting is not limited to the mine itself. When the desert wind sweeps across Goldfield, locals and visitors alike describe the town coming alive with a strange, pulsating energy. Doors creak without cause, wooden walkways groan under invisible weight, and the entire town seems to hum, a low vibration that echoes like the heartbeat of the dead. Those who linger in the streets after sundown often feel an eerie presence pressing in from all directions, as though the spirits of the miners and townsfolk are circling, observing, and guarding the desert they once called home. Some of the more vivid accounts come from paranormal investigators who have spent nights in the ghost town. Using cameras and audio equipment, they often capture strange phenomena, faint hammering and scraping, disembodied voices, and sudden drops in temperature that chill even in the warm desert night. Thermal cameras sometimes show figures moving deep within the mine's labyrinthine tunnels, their shapes indistinct but undeniably human. The investigators often describe a sensation of being watched, a persistent awareness that unseen eyes are tracking their movements. Legends suggest that the spirits remain bound to Goldfield for reasons beyond death. Many miners perished before they could see their fortunes above ground, and some died protecting the gold they extracted from bandits, accidents, or each other. In life, their work was grueling, relentless, and dangerous, and in death, it seems, the mine has held on to them. They continue to dig, to hammer, to haul, or through tunnels that have long since fallen silent to living voices. The echoes of their labor are said to resonate through the town, giving Goldfield a heartbeat of its own. Tourists have also reported that the ghosts sometimes interact in subtle ways. A visitor might feel a light brush against a shoulder, hear a whisper calling their name, or notice an object moved slightly from where it had been placed. Photographers occasionally capture orbs of light or faint silhouettes, and audio recordings can reveal whispered conversations or laughter not heard by the naked ear. These interactions, though fleeting and mysterious, reinforce the sense that Goldfield is not merely haunted, but alive with memory. Despite the ghostly activity, Goldfield continues to welcome visitors eager to explore both its history and its legends. Guides tell stories of miners who never left, recounting tales of accidents, hidden veins of gold, and the stubborn determination that defined the town's workers. Yet those who venture off the beaten path, deeper into the reconstructed shafts or along deserted streets at night, often return with accounts that suggest the past has never really departed. The town hums, the mine groans, and the miners continue their work, unseen but undeniably present. In many ways, the goldfield mine and the town above it are inseparable. The wealth extracted from the desert fueled life in the streets, but it also anchored the spirits of those who labored, suffered, and died below. The reconstructed buildings, the dusty streets, and the theatrical displays may welcome tourists with charm and nostalgia. But the underlying truth remains: the mine's legacy is alive, and the dead are still tending to their eternal shift. The Baghdad Mine, nestled in the rugged terrain of Yavapai County, Arizona, has been a cornerstone of copper production for over a century. Its modern operations hum with machinery and activity, a testament to technological advancement and industrial perseverance. But beneath the surface, in the old tunnels carved during the mine's early years, something lingers, a legacy of tragedy, fear, and the unexplained. Miners, historians, and locals alike speak in hushed tones about the mine's past, warning that the Baghdad Mine is more than a repository of copper. It is a place where the echoes of death still echo through stone and steel. The mine's early days were a mixture of ambition and danger. Miners carved extensive networks of tunnels into the desert rock, following copper veins that promised prosperity but demanded extreme risk. Working conditions were primitive. Shafts were narrow and poorly supported. Ventilation was minimal, and explosions, gas pockets, and cave-ins were an ever-present threat. For the men who labored in those shafts, a day underground could be a fight for survival. By the 1920s, the mine had gained a reputation as unforgiving, a place where fortune and misfortune were inseparable. In 1927, a tragedy cemented the mine's reputation as cursed. A section of the old tunnels collapsed, trapping several miners deep underground. Rescue efforts were immediate but limited by technology and unstable conditions. Despite exhaustive attempts, the men were never recovered, their bodies left entombed beneath tons of rock. For the families, the disaster was a permanent wound. For the mine, it became a source of whispered fear and caution. Miners who worked in subsequent decades spoke of strange occurrences, convinced that the spirits of those trapped in 1927 had never left. Workers today, even in the modern mine, report unsettling phenomena that defy explanation. Many recount hearing knocking sounds echoing from the old tunnels, a slow, deliberate series of 3 taps that seems almost communicative. The pattern is always the same: 3 knocks, then silence. Those who hear it describe an instinctive chill, a sense that the sound is more than a random collapse of stone or the vibration of distant machinery. Some miners pause, call out into the darkness, and report that the knocking responds, as though the trapped men are signaling for help that will never come. Others have reported faint voices, whispers carried through the ventilation systems or along the abandoned shafts. The voices are rarely distinct, often fragments of names, warnings, or exclamations, but their presence is undeniable. Some describe hearing the sound of pickaxes striking rock, or the distant echo of boots against the tunnel floor, only to find the shafts empty. The effect is unnerving, as if the mine itself remembers the lives lost within its walls and continues to replay them for anyone listening closely enough. Old-timers in Yavapai County tell stories that reinforce the mine's haunted reputation. They speak of miners who refuse to descend into the original tunnels after dark, claiming that the air grows heavy and oppressive, and that the shadows seem to shift of their own volition. Some recount seeing ghostly figures standing near collapsed shafts, their silhouettes indistinct but human, watching silently before disappearing into the darkness. These tales are often dismissed as superstition, but the consistency of the reports across generations lends them a chilling credibility. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Baghdad mine describe encounters that seem to straddle the line between history and haunting. Thermal cameras occasionally detect figures moving in tunnels that are long abandoned, and audio equipment picks up knocks, rumbles, and faint murmurs when no machinery is running. Investigators often feel sudden drops in temperature, a physical cold that seeps into bones, even in the Arizona desert heat. Some claim that the old mine responds to human presence, the spirits aware, almost sentient, maintaining the memory of their tragic entrapment. The mine's eerie reputation has not deterred modern operations, but it has shaped the culture among workers. Veteran miners treat the older tunnels with respect and caution, sometimes leaving offerings or marking sections of the shaft in quiet homage to those who died in 1927. New employees are warned not to ignore the history of the mine, not merely for superstition, but as a matter of safety and acknowledgement of lives lost. Even those who dismiss the paranormal aspects cannot ignore the sense of weight of history pressing from below as they navigate the shafts that have been in use for nearly a century. Local legends suggest that the spirits of the trapped miners have a purpose beyond haunting. They are said to guard the mine, not in malice, but in a perpetual watch over the copper veins that claimed their lives. The knocking signals are interpreted as reminders of their presence, as if they are marking time in the darkness, counting the hours, and ensuring that the mine remembers them. Some believe that the echoes are warnings to those who enter carelessly, a ghostly vigilance that protects both the living and the memory of the dead. Tourists and urban explorers who venture near the old mine entrances often feel an uncanny sense of foreboding. The desert wind carries hollow moans and strange vibrations through the earth. Photographs occasionally reveal orbs or mist-like shapes where no one stands, and audio recordings sometimes capture the unmistakable pattern of 3 knocks followed by silence. For many, these signs are enough to respect the mine from a distance, to acknowledge that beneath the sun-baked hills, the past is not silent. Even in the modern age, with its automated machinery and advanced safety measures, the Baghdad mine retains an aura of unease. Its history is embedded in every shaft, every tunnel, and every vein of copper. The tragedy of 1927 continues to echo through the rock, through the air, and through the people who work and live around it. The mine is more than a source of wealth. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are never forgotten, where their signals still tap against the walls, reminding the living that some work, some presence, and some sorrow cannot be buried. The Old Dominion mine, nestled in the hills above Globe, Arizona, stands as both a monument to prosperity and a testament to human suffering. For decades, it fueled the town's economy, sending veins of rich copper down from the desert hills to feed an ever-growing industrial nation. Miners flocked to its tunnels, drawn by the promise of wealth and the hope of a better life. Yet alongside the riches came tragedy, cave-ins, explosions, and the slow, relentless erosion of human lives that left scars on the town and, some say, the mine itself. The mine's entrances are now sealed, shuttered decades ago when production ceased, but locals insist that closing it did not end its activity. Ghost tours through Globe frequently culminate at the mine's old gate, a heavy, rusted structure bolted firmly against the desert hills. Guides warn tourists to listen carefully, to feel the air around them, and to respect the weight of history embedded in the rock. Visitors often report cold spots near the gate, pockets of air that feel unnaturally frigid despite the Arizona sun. Some claim to smell faint hints of burning candles, though no one has ever seen a flame. It is as though the mine remembers and mourns those who never returned from its depths. Locals are more direct in their warnings. Many recount seeing pale faces pressed against the bars of the gate, appearing for a moment before vanishing into shadow. These faces are often expressionless, yet observers report an unmistakable sense of awareness, as if the spirits are watching, waiting, or trying to communicate. They move silently, and their mouths seem to form words that cannot be heard. Some say these are the souls of miners who perished in the mine's early years, trapped in the earth and unable to move on. Others whisper that the mine itself is alive, a breathing entity feeding on fear, sorrow, and the memories of those who labored and died within its tunnels. The Old Dominion mine was no stranger to disaster. During its peak, accidents were frequent. Gas pockets ignited without warning, collapsing timber supports and sending rock crashing onto workers. Explosions echoed through narrow shafts, shaking the town above as if the earth itself were in pain. Many miners never saw the light again, buried beneath tons of rock and dust. Over time, the tally of deaths grew, leaving a palpable sense of unease that continues to linger. Those who venture near the mine at night often feel the weight of its history. Shadows seem to flicker across the hills, and sounds that resemble whispers ride the wind. Some visitors hear the faint clatter of tools or the low hum of machinery long dismantled, as if the mine is replaying its labor in the dark. Guides on ghost tours recount that when the temperature drops unexpectedly, or when the air grows still, something shifts near the gate. A cold hand, invisible yet tangible, brushes against a shoulder. A fleeting shadow passes across the rocks. A faint sigh drifts through the night. Residents of Globe tell stories that defy simple explanation. One woman swears she saw a figure in early 20th century mining garb standing just beyond the gate, staring at her before disappearing into the hillside. Another claims to have watched as a group of faces appeared at the bars simultaneously, mouthing urgent warnings in unison. Some believe the mine is angry, feeding on the fear of those who dare approach, unwilling to release the dead it has claimed. Others suggest it is protective, a guardian of the past, preserving the memory of lives lost, while reminding the living of the cost of greed and ambition. Paranormal investigators who explore the Old Dominion mine have documented strange phenomena. Cameras often capture orbs or flickers of light in sealed shafts, and audio devices record faint knocks or echoes of voices where none should exist. Temperature fluctuations occur without explanation, and some report an almost tangible presence that follows them through the desert terrain. Even when the mine remains silent, the very earth around it seems to hum, vibrating faintly beneath the feet of those who tread too close. The stories are not confined to night or to tourists. Daytime visitors occasionally experience the same eerie sensations. Shadows appear in photographs where no one stands, and some hikers report a sudden feeling of being watched while near the old entrance. These occurrences, though fleeting, reinforce the notion that the Old Dominion mine is more than a relic of industry. It is a vessel for memory, sorrow, and lingering spirits. Some theorists suggest that the mine's tunnels, carved deep into the hills, are a labyrinth not only of stone but of residual energy. The countless hours of labor, the fear, and the deaths that occurred within its walls have left traces that interact with the living. Cold spots, whispers, and shadowy figures may be echoes of intense emotion, replaying moments of terror and toil for those sensitive enough to perceive them. In this sense, the mine is not haunted by specific individuals, but by the collective weight of its history. Despite these warnings, the Old Dominion mine continues to draw curiosity. Tourists seek out ghost tours, historians catalog its history, and paranormal enthusiasts test their courage at the gate. Each encounter adds a layer to the lore. Cold air that chills to the bone, flickering shadows, faint knocks, and the sense of unseen eyes watching. Those who listen closely swear they can hear whispers from the past, carrying the names, laughter, and cries of miners trapped in the earth long ago. The mine's legacy is clear. Wealth extracted from its depths came at a terrible cost. The prosperity of Globe was built on labor, danger, and death, and the Old Dominion mine preserves that history in ways both tangible and intangible. It hums in the wind, breathes through the cracks in its walls, and manifests in the cold spots, the smells, and the ghostly faces at the gate. It is a place alive with memory, where the past refuses to stay buried. The Ray Mine, sprawling across the desert landscape of Pinell County, Arizona, is an impressive testament to modern mining. From its open pit, machinery moves ceaselessly, hauling tons of ore that feed industries across the nation. Yet for all its size and activity, the mine holds secrets beneath the surface, in forgotten shafts and old tunnels long abandoned, where darkness and history intertwine. While the open pit draws attention for its scale and productivity, it is the stories of what lies beneath that have made Ray Mine a place of whispered fear. Workers in the mine speak cautiously about shadows that appear along the edges of the deep pit, often at dusk or in the pre-dawn hours. Figures are seen moving just out of reach, disappearing when approached. Some say the shadows are illusions caused by the sun's angle or flickering lights, but the consistency of these sightings over decades makes skepticism uneasy. These figures are said to move deliberately, watching, following, and sometimes vanishing entirely, leaving a cold sense of awareness in those who notice them. The most enduring legend among miners is that of the man in the helmet. Old miners told stories of a figure clad in heavy work clothes and a miner's helmet, who follows workers as they navigate the pits and shafts. He never speaks, never interacts directly, and yet his presence is unmistakable. Some claim that he appears at the exact moment a worker begins a shift, lingering silently until that person leaves the area. The figure is rarely seen by multiple people at once, but over the years, the reports accumulate, forming a pattern of sightings that suggest a restless spirit tied to the mine itself. The origins of the man in the helmet are unclear. Some believe he was a foreman or miner who perished in a collapse decades ago. His body never recovered from the depths below. Others say he represents the collective weight of all those who died in Ray Mine's earlier operations. A spectral overseer tasked with ensuring the living respect the dangers that claimed so many before. Regardless of his story, the figure inspires both fear and caution. Workers describe a tangible chill when he appears, a sense of being watched, and the eerie impression that the ground itself holds its breath. There are darker aspects to these encounters. According to local lore, every few years, someone falls, sometimes into the open pit, sometimes down one of the hidden shafts. While accidents are inevitable in any mine, those who believe in the man in the helmet see a pattern. The falls seem to coincide with the figure's appearance, almost as if he is marking a warning or claiming a soul for the darkness below. Investigators have noted that these incidents tend to happen when a worker ignores safety protocols or ventures too close to forbidden areas, reinforcing the legend that the ghost's presence is both a guide and a threat. Some workers report auditory phenomena as well. Footsteps echo in tunnels where no one is present. The scraping of boots against metal or stone faint but persistent. Occasionally, there is the sound of a helmet being adjusted, the subtle clink of gear, or the distant rumble of machinery that has long since been dismantled. These sounds are often accompanied by the sudden drop of temperature, a chill that sinks into bones despite protective clothing. Many miners insist on bringing personal safety equipment and never work alone in areas where the shadows have been sighted, treating the old stories with a blend of superstition and pragmatic caution. Paranormal investigators who have ventured into the older shafts describe experiences that defy explanation. Thermal imaging sometimes detects heat signatures in areas with no human presence. Audio devices record knocks, muffled voices, or low humming that rises and falls without identifiable source. Some cameras capture indistinct figures, always moving just out of reach, and often resembling a man in a miner's helmet. Investigators frequently report the sensation of being followed, an unseen presence that mirrors movement, pauses when approached, and disappears when observed directly. The mind seems to respond, almost sentiently, to those who enter. Local residents have also contributed to the lore surrounding Ray Mine. They tell stories of lights flickering across the pit at night, shadows stretching unnaturally long over the desert floor, and strange sounds carried by the wind from the depths below. Some believe that the man in the helmet is not only tied to the physical mine, but to the desert itself, a guardian of both the buried past and the active operations above ground. The stories persist across generations, warning newcomers of unseen dangers, while the mine continues its work, indifferent to the fear it inspires. The abandoned shafts beneath Ray Mine are considered particularly dangerous. Miners advise against exploring them alone, citing not only structural instability, but also the inexplicable phenomena that occur within. Reports of shadows, whispers, and sudden temperature changes are common. Some explorers claim to have felt invisible hands brush against them or heard faint murmurs calling their names. Cameras sometimes catch brief flashes of light or dark figures moving across the frame, only to vanish in the next instant. For those who venture too far, the feeling of being watched intensifies, reinforcing the belief that the mine is alive with memory and presence. Despite these tales, Ray Mine remains a hub of activity. drawing workers and visitors alike who respect both its productivity and its history. Modern safety protocols and machinery have reduced the dangers above ground, yet the old legends persist. The man in the helmet continues to haunt the peripheries of the pit and the abandoned shafts, a silent reminder of those who perished and the unforgiving nature of the mine. The Gold Road Mine, hidden beneath the desert town of Oatman, along the legendary Route 66, has long been a source of wealth, danger, and whispered fear. For decades, it fueled the hopes of miners and the fortunes of speculators, sending veins of gold from the rocky hills above to the bustling markets below. But beneath the sun-baked streets and crumbling wooden storefronts of Oatman lies a darkness older than the town itself, one that workers and locals have come to know as the Watcher. From the earliest days of the mine, strange stories circulated among the men who labored in its depths. Miners spoke of sudden glimpses of a figure appearing in flashes of light deep within the tunnels, as if the rock itself had flickered to life. He was not fully formed, yet he was unmistakable, a man or something like a man, tall and imposing, his eyes glowing like burning coal. Those who saw him said he moved silently, appearing where danger was greatest, yet never directly interacting with anyone. His presence was suffocating, a pressure in the air that made the tunnels feel smaller and the shadows deeper. The Watcher became more than a rumor. He was a force that shaped behavior in the mine. Dogs, which were often brought into the tunnels to sniff for unstable areas or hidden pockets of ore, refused to enter certain shafts. They would growl, whine, and turn away, their instinctive fear so intense that miners came to respect it. The locals interpreted this behavior as a warning. These were the places where the Watcher fed, drawing power from the fear of intruders, or perhaps marking territories best left untouched. No miner, no matter how daring, challenged the figure directly, for experience suggested that confrontation only brought accidents, collapses, or sudden illness. The mine's shafts are narrow and twisting, carved by hand and reinforced with timbers that groan under the weight of rock above. In these tunnels, light is scarce, and the shadows stretch unnaturally long, playing tricks on the mind. It is in this environment that the Watcher manifests, appearing as a spark in the dark, a sudden reflection off metal, or a shadow cast at the edge of vision. Miners who glimpsed him often described the same sensation, an overwhelming awareness of being observed, an oppressive presence that pressed on their minds as much as their bodies. Some left the shafts trembling, convinced they had narrowly escaped a malevolent force. Stories from Oatman are filled with accounts of strange phenomena in and around the mine. Tools vanish or appear in places they were never left. Eerie sounds echo through the tunnels even when no one is present, and temperatures drop suddenly, chilling the bone. Workers report faint whispers that seem to come from the walls themselves, often repeating their names or mimicking the sounds of machinery long dismantled. When the wind sweeps through the town, carrying desert dust across the empty streets, some swear they hear faint clinking, like pickaxes striking rock in a shaft that has long been abandoned. The legend of the Watcher extends beyond the miners. Locals recount tales of tourists and trespassers who wandered too close to the mine entrances after sundown. They tell of people who vanish briefly, returning pale and shaken, claiming they had seen glowing eyes in the tunnels and shadows, moving independently of their source. Dogs pulled them back, growling furiously at areas no human could see. Some say that the Watcher lingers near the surface as well as underground, ensuring that the curiosity of the living does not trespass where it should not. Those who study the paranormal in the area describe the Watcher as a force connected not merely to the individuals who worked in the mine, but to the mine itself. The figure is tied to the history of labor, greed, and death that built the tunnels. The more fear generated, the stronger the presence becomes, feeding on the anxiety of those who enter. Thermal imaging sometimes reveals shapes in the shafts that vanish when approached. Audio recordings pick up footsteps, whispers, or faint metallic clinks that match no machinery. The consistency of these occurrences suggests that the Watcher is no ordinary specter, but something tied intimately to the life of the mine, its rocks, and the fears of the living. Old-timers in Oatman recall an incident in the early 1950s when a new worker, eager to prove himself, ventured deep into a forbidden shaft alone. The dog that accompanied him refused to follow, growling and backing away. Undeterred, the miner pressed forward. Witnesses later reported a flash of light and the sound of a heavy metallic strike echoing through the tunnels. The miner emerged hours later, pale and silent, refusing to speak of what he had seen. After that, new workers were warned. The watcher does not tolerate intrusion, and those who challenge him risk more than fear. Even today, with modern mining techniques and machinery, the legend persists. Workers on tours or maintenance crews report sudden shadows at the edges of the open pit or strange reflections in their helmet lights. Some describe a sensation of being followed through narrow passageways, a pressure on the back or shoulders that disappears when they turn. Dogs brought along refuse to enter certain areas, their behavior reinforcing the idea that the mine itself is alive, and the watcher remains its vigilant guardian. The Gold Road mine serves as a reminder that wealth and danger are inseparable. The tunnels that once produced gold are now repositories of memory, fear, and legend. The watcher embodies the tension between life and death, curiosity and caution, the living and the restless spirits of those who worked and suffered in silence. His eyes, burning like coal, peer from the darkness, a warning and a presence that cannot be ignored. Visitors to Oatman often leave with stories of shadows and flashes, chills that descend without warning, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Locals offer polite smiles and cautionary words, warning that some areas are better admired from a distance. The Gold Road mine remains active and alive. Yet beneath its open pits and rocky edges, the old shafts conceal something older, deeper, and far more vigilant than any human eye. The Leviathan Mine, perched in the remote stretches of Mojave County, Arizona, is a relic of ambition, industry, and fear. Unlike the more famous mining sites of the state, it is largely abandoned and overgrown. Its wooden supports rotting, its rusted equipment half buried in desert sand, and its tunnels sealed against intruders. Few people venture near this isolated location, not because of legal restriction, but because a sense of unease hangs over the area. A weight that grows heavier the closer one approaches. Campers and travelers along the dusty desert trails often report strange sounds at night, the kind that seem too deliberate to be mere coincidence. Metallic scraping echoes faintly across the canyons, as if someone, or something, is still digging below, deep within the Leviathan's hidden shafts. The history of the mine is shadowed in tragedy and mystery. During its peak, it produced a modest but significant yield of copper and silver, attracting a small settlement around the entrance. Miners worked long hours under grueling conditions, tunneling into the desert rock and braving unstable shafts to extract every ounce of ore. Accidents were common. Cave-ins, explosions, and suffocating gas pockets claimed lives on a regular basis. Many bodies were never recovered, trapped beneath tons of stone and timber, leaving an air of unresolved dread that still clings to the site. Locals say this history laid the foundation for the strange occurrences that now define the Leviathan mine. Those brave enough to explore the site report a host of unsettling phenomena. Footprints appear in the dust, fresh and defined, yet they lead only to sealed doors or collapsed tunnels. No one has ever explained how these impressions could be made without human presence, and no animals are known to create such precise patterns. Explorers often follow the prints, hearts pounding, only to find walls of rusted metal or collapsed timber, as though the mine itself is taunting them. The footprints vanish into nothingness, leaving an echo of curiosity and fear in their wake. Campers and hikers nearby recount nights filled with impossible sounds. At dusk, the desert grows quiet, yet deep within the canyons surrounding the mine, the faint clinking of metal sometimes drifts on the wind. It is slow, deliberate, and rhythmic, scraping as though pickaxes are striking stone, or machinery long dismantled is being operated by unseen hands. Those who have heard it describe the sensation of being watched, the brush of cold air against their necks, and an instinctive dread that grows with every note of metal on rock. Some swear the sounds are too precise to be natural, too purposeful to be echoes of the past. They belong to something alive within the abandoned tunnels. Paranormal teams who have ventured into the Leviathan mine have brought cameras, audio recorders, and thermal imaging, yet even modern technology fails to fully explain what occurs. On one documented investigation, a team reported hearing slow, measured breathing behind a wall, human, close, yet coming from the other side of a sealed shaft. They tapped on the timber, and the breathing paused, resuming seconds later, as if testing the intruder's courage. Cameras sometimes capture fleeting shadows in the corners of tunnels where no one stands, and audio devices record metallic echoes, whispers, and soft groans of wood and stone, shifting under unknown weight. Even seasoned investigators admit that the Leviathan mine is unlike any site they have encountered, a place where history, fear, and perhaps something supernatural converge. Locals in Mojave County share their own stories, often prefacing them with cautious warnings. They speak of nights when lights flicker strangely over the mine, when dogs refuse to cross certain trails, and when the wind carries faint echoes of human activity from deep within the sealed shafts. One elderly resident recalls a prospector who disappeared while exploring the mine decades ago. According to the tale, he was never found, but on certain nights, campers swear they hear his voice calling faintly, muffled yet urgent, echoing from the direction of the tunnels. The legend of the Leviathan mine is passed down with equal parts fear and fascination, a cautionary tale for anyone drawn to abandoned places. The mine's structure itself seems to encourage unease. Explorers often report the sensation that the walls close in, that the air grows heavier, and that movement is being observed from angles they cannot see. Even during daylight, the mine feels alive, as if it remembers every footstep and every misfortune that occurred within its depths. At night, this awareness becomes palpable, a presence that presses against those who venture too close. Some theorists suggest that the Leviathan mine is more than haunted, that the accumulation of death, fear, and effort has imbued the site with an energy that manifests physically. Shadows move where they should not, metallic scraping echoes where no one walks, and breathing comes from sealed walls. To these theorists, the Leviathan is not a single ghost but the consciousness of the mine itself, a guardian or predator that responds to trespassers. Its feeding is subtle but undeniable, manifesting in fear, disorientation, and unexplained phenomena that push intruders away or warn them to leave. Despite warnings, the mine continues to draw curiosity. Urban explorers, paranormal enthusiasts, and the occasionally daring hiker find themselves at the edge of its open areas, cameras in hand, heart pounding, many leaves shaken, having experienced cold spots, fleeting shadows, and the metallic scraping that defies explanation. Few venture into the deeper shafts, and those who do often report the feeling of being followed, a presence hovering just beyond sight, watching, waiting, and feeding on their apprehension. The Pioneer Mine, tucked into the rugged terrain of Pima County, Arizona, stands as a chilling testament to ambition, danger, and human fragility. For decades, it was a hub of labor, where miners worked tirelessly to extract veins of copper and silver from the unforgiving earth. The mine's output brought wealth and opportunity, yet it also left a dark legacy of tragedy. Collapses were common, sudden, and often deadly, claiming dozens of lives over the years. Survivors spoke of a haunting detail that defied explanation. Just moments before the earth caved in, they would hear laughter, faint, mocking, and impossibly human, echoing through the tunnels. The laughter was described as high-pitched at times, soft and playful at others, but always carrying an undercurrent of cruelty. It seemed to ripple along the walls of the shafts, bouncing from timber to stone, impossible to locate. Miners who heard it often froze in place, hearts hammering, only to be struck moments later by falling rock, shifting earth, or collapsing beams. Some claim that it was the last thing the deceased miners ever heard, and survivors swore the sounds lingered long after the mine had quieted. The idea of laughter accompanying disaster became part of the mine's identity, a sinister signature that made the Pioneer Mine more feared than any other operation in the region. Even decades after the mine ceased regular operations, the echoes of those tragedies have persisted. Visitors who walk the abandoned corridors report hearing faint laughter drifting through the air. It starts softly, almost imperceptibly, teasing the edges of perception, then grows louder, as though circling the listener. Sometimes it mimics footsteps, the creak of old beams, or even whispers from unseen miners. Those unfamiliar with the legend often dismiss the sounds as wind or the settling of old structures. But locals and seasoned explorers recognize it immediately. The unmistakable laughter of the pioneer mine. The mine itself is a labyrinth of decaying tunnels and unstable shafts. Timber supports sag under the weight of decades, and rock faces are cracked and crumbling. Shadows gather in corners, and light seems to bend oddly along passageways. In these corridors, the laughter often transforms, stretching into screams, the sound rising and falling with unnatural cadence. Those who hear the shift describe a rush of fear, as if the mine itself is alive, taunting and tormenting intruders. The screams are sudden and startling, leaving an echo that lingers long after the sound has ceased. Many have reported a sensation of being watched, a presence close enough to brush against their shoulders, though no one is visible. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the pioneer mine for decades. Equipped with cameras, audio recorders, and thermal sensors, many have captured inexplicable phenomena. Audio devices record laughter that shifts in tone and volume, footsteps that begin and stop abruptly, and low moans that resonate from deep within the mine. Cameras sometimes reveal shadowy figures that disappear when approached, flickers of movement that cannot be explained by natural causes. Thermal readings show sudden cold spots where no air currents exist, often coinciding with the moments when laughter or screams are reported. For those who enter the mine, every step carries a sense of history, of lives abruptly ended and energy left behind. Locals who live near the mine offer warnings to newcomers. They tell stories of hikers or urban explorers who ventured too deep and returned shaken, pale, and unwilling to speak of what they experienced. Some report seeing faint faces pressed against tunnel walls, eyes wide in terror, or glimpses of figures crouched in shadow, frozen as if trapped in time. Dogs, too, refuse to enter certain shafts, growling or pulling their owners away, as if sensing the same presences. These signs are not taken lightly, and many consider the pioneer mine to be more than just abandoned tunnels. It is a repository of fear, memory, and perhaps something alive, feeding on the curiosity of those who trespass. The psychological impact of the pioneer mine is undeniable. Even the most rational visitors feel tension tightening around them as they walk through its corridors. Footsteps echo oddly, shadows shift unnaturally, and the air feels heavier. Some describe hearing voices in the periphery, whispering names or phrases that vanish when acknowledged. The laughter, persistent and unpredictable, can rise from a single giggle to a chorus of mocking voices, then erupt into screams that reverberate through the mine. Many explorers report a primal instinct to flee, as though the mine itself urges them to leave. Historical accounts lend weight to these experiences. Mining logs, accident reports, and oral histories from survivors document the collapses, the sudden cave-ins, and the deaths that occurred without warning. Survivors' testimonies repeatedly mention hearing laughter, sometimes described as high-pitched or sing-song, other times deep and guttural. These reports are so consistent that researchers cannot dismiss them as coincidence. Over the decades, the laughter has become a symbol of the mine's dark legacy, a reminder of the cost of greed, risk, and human vulnerability in the face of an unforgiving earth. Despite the dangers and the eerie phenomena, the pioneer mine continues to draw attention. Historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and adventurers seek it out, compelled by curiosity and a desire to confront its mysteries. They leave with stories of shadowed corners, sudden chills, laughter echoing along decayed walls, and the unsettling impression of unseen eyes tracking every movement. Some never return to the mine, unwilling to face it again, while others speak of it with a mixture of reverence and fear, knowing they encountered something beyond the ordinary. The old Bisbee Tunnel, snaking beneath the streets of Bisbee, Arizona, is a relic of a bygone era, a passage carved not for leisure, but for labor and survival. Though it was never a mine itself, it served as a vital artery, transporting miners from town to mine, and later, as a secretive route for smugglers. Its walls, hewn from the rock centuries ago, bear the weight of countless footsteps, the echo of lives passing through, and the lingering presence of those who never emerged. Today, the tunnel is pitch black and cold, a corridor where water drips steadily from the ceiling, each drop striking the stone floor with a sound that locals insist resembles whispering. The tunnel is narrow, lined with crude supports, and stretches for miles beneath the desert streets. Even during the day, light barely penetrates beyond its entrance, leaving the deeper passages in near total darkness. The air is damp and heavy, carrying the scent of wet stone and old iron. Those who enter speak of an oppressive atmosphere, a feeling that the tunnel itself watches them, as if remembering the miners, laborers, and smugglers who once passed through. The rhythmic drip of water and the occasional gust of wind can be deceptive. To the untrained eye, it is a quiet, abandoned passage, but to those familiar with its stories, it hums with memory and menace. Among the tunnel's many legends, none is more persistent than that of the Tunnel Woman. Locals tell of a pale figure who roams the passageways, her eyes hollow and luminous, carrying a dim lantern that casts long, quivering shadows on the stone walls. She is said to be searching for her husband, a miner who vanished decades ago during a shift in the adjacent mines. According to the story, he never returned, swallowed by the earth, or trapped by some accident that left him forever lost in a labyrinth beneath Bisbee. The Tunnel Woman is driven by grief and devotion, endlessly retracing her husband's steps, her lantern bobbing in the dark like a beacon for the lost. Those who have glimpsed her describe the encounter in hushed tones. She appears suddenly, her form half lit by her lantern, gliding silently along the tunnels. Her face is pale, almost luminescent in the darkness, with eyes that seem to peer directly into the soul of anyone who crosses her path. Witnesses say she does not speak, but her presence conveys a profound sorrow and longing, as though the weight of decades of searching has imprinted itself upon her very being. Some report feeling a sudden chill, an inexplicable heaviness, or the sensation of being followed, only to find the tunnel empty when they turn. The sounds of the old Bisbee tunnel amplify the sense of unease. Water drips continuously from cracks in the ceiling, producing a cadence that many insist mimics whispering voices. Occasionally, the echoes take on a human quality, footsteps that do not match any visitor, a shuffle of clothing, or a faint creak of wood that seems to come from deep within the tunnel. Paranormal investigators have documented strange audio phenomena, including low murmurs, unintelligible whispers, and the subtle sound of a lantern swinging in an area where no human presence exists. Thermal cameras sometimes detect faint heat signatures, brief, fleeting shapes that vanish when approached, often coinciding with the moments when the Tunnel Woman is reported. Historical records of the tunnel provide a chilling backdrop for these encounters. In the early 1900s, miners used it daily to access the surrounding mines. Later, during the Prohibition era, it became a route for smugglers, moving contraband undetected through the town. Accidents were not uncommon. Workers became lost, injured, or trapped in the twisting passages, some never emerging. These tragedies laid the foundation for the tales that persist today. It is said that grief, fear, and unresolved tragedy imbue the tunnel, giving rise to the ghostly manifestations that now haunt its depths. Visitors have shared countless experiences that reinforce the legend. Some speak of seeing a faint glow far down the passage, following it in hopes of understanding, only for it to vanish. Others hear footsteps pacing behind them, quickening when they quicken, fading when they stop. Occasionally, the Tunnel Woman's lantern appears at an unexpected angle, illuminating a stretch of wall or a puddle of water, then vanishing when approached. Those who linger too long often report a deep, pressing sadness, a feeling that the tunnel itself is mourning, carrying echoes of loss and longing from a century past. Dogs and animals, too, react strangely near the tunnel entrances. Local guides report that even the calmest dogs will whine, refuse to enter, or bark at areas where no human can be seen. This behavior has strengthened the belief that something unseen inhabits the deeper corridors, an entity attuned to life and presence, feeding not on aggression but on fear, curiosity, and grief. Explorers who venture deeper into the tunnel describe a surreal disorientation. The walls seem to shift, the darkness thickens, and the dripping water sometimes forms patterns of sound that mimic human footsteps or even soft laughter. In these moments, the tunnel feels alive, a living entity that remembers every miner who walked its passageways, every secret smuggled through its shadowed depths, and every tragedy that occurred behind its walls. The tunnel woman is often reported at these critical points, her lantern flickering, her eyes searching, her silent vigil never ending. The old Bisbee Tunnel is more than an abandoned passage. It is a repository of memory, grief, and mystery. Its damp corridors hold the echoes of human ambition and loss, the laughter and whispers of those who walked before, and the gaze of the tunnel woman, eternally searching. Visitors leave with stories of shadows and lantern light, of footsteps and whispers, of chills that descend without warning. For those who venture into its depths, the tunnel is alive, watching and listening, a reminder that some paths, no matter how well traveled in life, are never truly left behind. The Silver Bell Mine, nestled in the heart of Avra Valley, Arizona, is a sprawling operation that has been producing copper for over a century. By day, it hums with the predictable rhythm of machinery, conveyors, and human labor. But beneath the surface, in the older tunnels long sealed to the public, and even most workers, a different kind of life persists, one that is dark, unpredictable, and far from human. Those who spend time in the depths of the Silver Bell Mine often speak of phenomena that cannot be explained by physics, fatigue, or imagination. Tools move without hands, shadows shift independently of light, and moans echo through corridors where no worker has stepped in decades. The mine's older shafts are labyrinthine, carved by hand in the early 1900s and reinforced with timbers that creak under their own weight. Dust hangs in the air, thick and dry, and water trickles in slowly from cracks in the rock, forming tiny pools that mirror the faint illumination from lanterns and headlamps. Though the mine has been modernized, these older tunnels remain treacherous. Workers report sudden drops in temperature, walls that feel unnaturally cold, and a pressure that seems to follow them as they navigate the twisting passages. In the past, these areas were used for testing new extraction methods and for storage, but now they are avoided by most employees, not out of regulation, but out of fear. One of the most persistent reports from workers involves tools that move on their own. Hammers, wrenches, and shovels are sometimes found in places they were never left, or lying at strange angles, as if recently handled. Miners describe stepping away from a work area for a few minutes, only to return to find equipment shifted, dropped, or stacked in impossible configurations. The movements are subtle, almost playful, but they carry a sense of intent, as if an unseen hand is testing boundaries, asserting presence. Some workers claim they have felt a brush of air against their hands, as if something invisible had just adjusted a tool. Though no drafts could explain it, they are not the groans of settling rock or the creaks of timber, nor do they resemble the hum of machinery. Workers describe them as human-like, almost mournful, as if the mine itself is exhaling sorrow. In some cases, the moans appear to respond to movement. Pause and listen, and the sound will intensify. Move forward, and it recedes slightly, always just out of reach. Experienced miners often warn newcomers that the moans are a test, a way of gauging whether someone respects the tunnel's unspoken rules. Security footage has also captured unsettling phenomena. Cameras installed for safety in abandoned areas have recorded glowing shapes crossing dark halls, flickering in and out of existence. Sometimes the shapes are humanoid, towering and indistinct, with light seeming to radiate from their forms rather than reflect off them. Other times, they are amorphous, moving too quickly to be captured clearly, leaving trails of luminescence behind. Analysts reviewing the footage often pause, debating whether the recordings are the result of light distortion, camera malfunction, or something far more inexplicable. For those who work in the mine, however, the footage confirms what they have long suspected. Some presence lingers in the older tunnels, indifferent to time and human schedules. The history of the Silver Bell mine may offer clues to its haunting. In its early decades, it was notorious for accidents, collapses, and disputes over ore rights. Miners who died in cave-ins or from exposure to toxic gases were often buried hastily, sometimes within the mine itself. Labor conflicts and secretive operations left a residue of fear and violence. It is said that this concentrated energy may have imbued the tunnels with a restless presence, a consciousness born of human suffering and unfulfilled labor. The older shafts, long sealed, are particularly prone to unexplained activity, as if they remember the workers who once toiled there and resent those who enter uninvited. Workers and visitors alike describe a psychological impact beyond the physical phenomena. Even the most rational individuals feel unease when entering the older tunnels. Shadows appear in peripheral vision, footsteps echo where none should exist, and the air seems to thicken unnaturally. The glowing figures on camera often correspond with these moments, appearing in areas where multiple employees have reported hearing moans or feeling tools move. For those who spend hours in these shafts, the cumulative effect is oppressive, a creeping dread that intensifies with every step, every sound, and every shadow. Local legends reinforce the unease. Stories circulate of miners disappearing temporarily, only to reappear hours later, pale and unsteady, claiming they were watched by shapes in the dark. Some speak of faint whispering, unintelligible but insistent, urging them to leave or guiding them down unfamiliar corridors. Dogs brought into the old tunnels often refuse to enter, growling or backing away from areas humans have long ignored. These reactions suggest that whatever inhabits the mine recognizes living beings, and perhaps judges them based on behavior, caution, or respect for the tunnels. The Silver Bell mine, in all its operational glory, is a site of productivity and danger. Yet beneath its modern operations, the older tunnels remain a realm of mystery and spectral presence. Tools move without hands, moans echo through empty halls, and glowing shapes traverse the darkness, never lingering but always observing. Those who enter these corridors are faced with a choice: respect the space, leave quickly, or risk becoming part of the mine's enduring legend. The King Solomon Mine, perched in the rugged hills of Yavapai County, Arizona, is a monument to ambition, labor, and tragedy. Though abandoned for decades, its jagged entrances and rusting structures still draw the curious, hikers, and urban explorers, each drawn by the stark beauty of the desert and the whispers of history. But those who venture close are quickly reminded that the King Solomon Mine is no ordinary ruin. Locals speak of the eerie hymns that drift through the canyons, a chorus of voices that seem to rise from the very rock. They say these are the voices of miners long dead, singing as they once did, their harmonies blending seamlessly with the desert wind. The mine's history is etched in sweat, toil, and misfortune. In its heyday, miners worked around the clock, extracting copper, silver, and gold from veins hidden deep within the rock. Accidents were frequent. Rockfalls, gas leaks, and sudden cave-ins claimed lives with disturbing regularity. Entire crews vanished, leaving only the echo of hammers on stone and the faint glow of lanterns still swinging in empty shafts. Survivors spoke of hearing songs, simple hymns, or spirituals hummed in rhythm to the work, notes that rose above the clamor of pickaxes and carts. When tragedy struck, the songs never truly stopped. Witnesses claimed that they lingered, carried on the wind, even after death. Today, hikers and explorers often hear the hymns as they approach the mine. The first time it happens, the experience is almost magical. A soft melody drifts from the canyon walls, rhythmic and haunting, echoing as though a choir of miners were hidden just out of sight. Some say the wind carries the music, though it moves in ways the air should not allow, wrapping around corners, rising and falling without consistent direction. The sound is never loud, yet it carries an uncanny presence, a reminder that the past is not truly gone. Many hikers recount moments when the voices suddenly stop. One moment, the hymns flow like a river through the canyon, and the next, there is nothing but silence, a silence so thick it feels almost physical, pressing on the chest and slowing the breath. In these pauses, the atmosphere shifts, and visitors report a sensation of being watched. Some claim to hear footsteps echoing from tunnels that have long been abandoned, or feel a chill as though someone or something has drawn near. The stillness is suffocating, and even the wind itself seems to hesitate, as if the desert is holding its breath in the presence of unseen observers. The King Solomon mine is riddled with tunnels and shafts that twist unpredictably into the hills. Many entrances are blocked by debris, while others gape open, dark and cavernous. Within these tunnels, explorers report cold spots that descend without warning, shadows that flicker in peripheral vision, and the sensation of walls closing in when no physical change occurs. The hymns are most often heard near these entrances, their source impossible to pinpoint. Some theorists suggest the sound is residual energy, a recording of labor and song etched into the stone itself. Others believe it is the collective presence of miners, bound to the place by their unfinished work and untimely deaths. Paranormal investigations at the site have captured intriguing evidence. Audio recordings pick up faint harmonics, barely distinguishable from the wind, yet strangely structured, as though multiple voices sing in unison. Infrared cameras occasionally detect heat signatures where no living beings are present. Small glimmers that move and vanish, following the contours of tunnels or the canyons outside. Even seasoned explorers admit that the mine has a presence unlike other abandoned sites. It is patient and observant, sometimes playful in the way it manipulates sound and shadow, and at other times oppressive, a silent weight pressing on those who dare to intrude. Local folklore amplifies the sense of unease. Stories tell of miners who vanished without a trace, of workers who returned from the tunnels changed, pale and silent, claiming they had heard singing deep beneath the earth. Hikers report seeing fleeting figures along ridgelines, glimpses of men in dusty clothing with lanterns in hand, frozen mid-step, only to vanish when approached. Dogs and other animals, attuned to vibrations beyond human perception, often refuse to enter areas near the mine, growling at invisible presences or pulling their owners back toward safer ground. These reactions add weight to the theory that the King Solomon mine remains alive in some way, conscious of those who traverse its old paths. The psychological impact of the mine is undeniable. Even those who enter expecting nothing report a creeping sense of dread and anticipation. The hymns seem to follow, drifting through the air, then fading abruptly, leaving a void that is more terrifying than any sound. The sudden silence feels like a judgment, as if the mine is listening, evaluating, and deciding who may safely pass and who is unwelcome. Some hikers describe the sensation of being drawn toward specific tunnels, compelled by the music and shadow, while others feel an invisible hand urging them back to sunlight and open air. Despite the warnings and the stories, the King Solomon mine continues to attract attention. Historians, paranormal enthusiasts, and hikers alike are drawn by curiosity and the beauty of the landscape, unaware that the hills conceal a presence that is patient, watchful, and deeply entwined with the land. The abandoned tunnels, the canyon echoes, and the whispering winds are not merely remnants of history. They are a living testament to the lives, labor, and lingering spirits of those who once called the mine home. Castle Dome Mine, nestled in the heart of Castle Dome Ghost Town, Arizona, is a place where the past refuses to rest. The mine, once the lifeblood of a bustling town, now sits abandoned, its shafts and tunnels swallowed by shadows. Visitors wandering the ghost town often report a sense of being watched, as if the mine itself remembers the labor and lives it once claimed. The air carries a chill that seems out of place under the relentless desert sun, a reminder that this place is far more than just weathered wood and rusted metal. Locals and tourists alike speak of strange sounds that ripple through the ghost town, especially near the old mine entrance. Some swear they hear the echo of pickaxes striking rock, the rhythmic pounding that once meant profit and survival. These sounds are often accompanied by muffled weeping, a sorrowful cadence that seems to seep from the very walls of the mine. It is as though the miners, long dead, are trapped in an endless loop of toil, fear, and despair. One of the most unnerving accounts comes from a caretaker who spent a season maintaining the ghost town. He recalled an evening when he climbed the ladder into one of the mine's upper levels. With each step, the wooden rungs groaned under his weight, blending with a faint sound of shuffling behind him. He paused, heart pounding, and turned, expecting perhaps a fellow worker or a stray animal. But there was nothing, only the empty darkness of the shaft. When he resumed climbing, the footsteps returned, always just behind, never catching up, never passing. It was a presence without form, a memory without face, and it followed him until he exited the mine, shaken and silent. Many visitors describe a similar sensation, a feeling of being followed, watched, or whispered to. Some claim to have glimpsed shadowy figures darting between the abandoned buildings of Castle Dome Ghost Town, moving with unnatural speed and silence. Others report sudden chills, cold spots that cannot be explained by the desert breeze, and brief flashes of light in the mine shafts when no one else is around. Cameras left on tripods sometimes capture odd orbs or streaks of light appearing in frames where no source is present. The phenomenon has been a source of fascination for paranormal investigators, who note that the mine's labyrinthian tunnels and wooden structures create both echoes and optical illusions, amplifying the eerie atmosphere. The history of Castle Dome Mine adds a layer of gravity to these experiences. Established in the 1870s during the Arizona silver boom, the mine drew hundreds of workers seeking fortune and stability. Life in the town was harsh and often deadly. Mining accidents, disease, and occasional conflicts with bandits or disgruntled workers were common. Stories of those who never returned from the mines became part of local folklore. It is said that, on particularly quiet nights, the wailing heard near the entrance is not entirely a trick of the wind, but the voices of those who perished underground, unable to leave their posthumous toil behind. Tourists visiting the ghost town often enter the mine at their own risk. Some report that descending into the tunnels brings an almost tactile weight, a pressure that seems to push from all sides. The darkness feels dense, pressing against the senses, while the slightest sound rocks shifting. A gust of wind, distant dripping resonates, as if amplified by unseen ears. Hikers and explorers frequently describe a sudden, inexplicable sense of urgency, as if the mine itself is cautioning them against venturing too far. Many exit quickly, unnerved, but with stories that spread like wildfire to others who might dare visit. There are accounts of equipment moving on its own, tools shifting from one corner to another, and old carts rattling down tracks that have long since fallen into disrepair. Visitors sometimes hear low murmurs, almost like conversations, emanating from deep within the tunnels. The voices are indistinct, fragmented, sometimes repeating phrases that hint at frustration, fear, or sorrow. It is easy to dismiss these as echoes or the mine's projection. Yet the sheer consistency of reports over decades has given Castle Dome Mine a reputation that extends far beyond Arizona. Photographers and urban explorers have documented peculiar phenomena, shadows that move against the light, reflections in puddles that show figures standing where none exist, and faint footprints appearing in dust-covered surfaces. Even seasoned investigators accustomed to haunted sites and ghost towns remark on the oppressive atmosphere within. Castle Dome Mine noting that it seems almost alive, a sentient relic that remembers every strike of the pickaxe, every whispered argument, every cry of despair. It is as if the mine itself holds the collective memory of the town, replaying it for those sensitive enough to notice. Despite the unsettling experiences, the mine continues to draw visitors. Some come for the history, others for the thrill of paranormal investigation, and many simply to glimpse the remnants of a town frozen in time. Guides often share stories of miners' hardships, of hidden veins of silver, and of sudden accidents that claimed lives underground. Yet, all the tales seem to circle back to one thing: the spirits of Castle Dome Mine are not entirely at rest. The sounds, the shadows, the inexplicable movements, they are threads of a story that refuses to end. A narrative etched into the very stone and timber of the mind. Those who leave Castle Dome Ghost Town often report a lingering unease, a sensation that the mind's gaze follows them even after they are miles away. In quiet moments, they recall the distant echo of pickaxes, the soft murmur of voices, and the heavy footsteps that never fully vanished. Castle Dome Mine stands as a haunting reminder that some places cannot be abandoned, that the toil and tragedy of the past can echo through time, and that the spirits of those who lived and died here are never truly gone. Visitors leave with stories to tell, memories that haunt their dreams, and an unmistakable sense that Castle Dome Mine is alive in ways that defy explanation. A spectral sentinel of history, waiting quietly for the next curious soul to step inside. Mammoth Mine, tucked into the rugged terrain of Pineal County, Arizona, lies beneath the looming shadow of the Superstition Mountains, a range long steeped in legend and dread. The mine itself is an abandoned labyrinth of tunnels and shafts, its entrance partially collapsed, warning all who pass by that this is no ordinary dig. Locals say the mine was cursed from the beginning, a place where greed and desperation intersected with something far darker. And anyone who dared venture too far risked more than just injury. They risked encountering forces beyond the natural world. The lore surrounding Mammoth Mine intertwines with the legend of the lost Dutchman's gold, a treasure hidden deep within the Superstition Mountains, sought after by countless fortune hunters over centuries. Stories claim that the mine's tunnels were dug to reach the Dutchman's hoard, but something sinister awaited those who entered. According to eyewitness accounts, the deeper you venture, the colder the air becomes, as if the mine itself is exhaling a frozen warning. Those who have explored beyond the entrance report an oppressive, almost tangible darkness, a suffocating weight that seems to press in from every direction. Ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Mammoth Mine, hoping to document evidence of the supernatural. Many of their recordings are chilling, distant screams echoing through sealed shafts, as if trapped souls cry out from beyond. The sound is not constant, but when it appears, it carries a clarity that cuts through even the thickest walls of stone. Some claim the screams are warnings. Others insist they are the voices of those who perished in the mine, condemned to wander the labyrinth forever. Thermal imaging and night vision footage reveal shapes that defy logic, human-like forms, moving along walls, squeezing through crevices too narrow for a living person. Cameras catch fleeting silhouettes that vanish the moment they are approached, leaving behind only the memory of movement in the shadows. Visitors to the mine speak of sudden temperature drops, sometimes several degrees within a matter of steps. This chill is not simply the desert night air seeping in. It is accompanied by an unmistakable sensation of being watched. Footsteps echo where no one has walked, and the soft scuffing of rock on stone mimics the frantic efforts of miners long gone. The air sometimes carries faint, metallic tangs, reminiscent of blood or rusted tools, and an almost imperceptible whispering that seems to come from the very walls. Those who linger too long report a rising sense of panic, as if unseen eyes are urging them to retreat before it is too late. The legend of the mine's connection to the lost Dutchman's gold only heightens the fear surrounding it. Explorers have noted strange formations in the tunnels, walls that seem too smooth, shafts that twist in impossible directions, and caverns where maps and logic fail entirely. Some theorize that these features are not natural, but created by forces beyond human comprehension, designed to mislead and trap anyone seeking the treasure. Others claim that the gold itself is cursed, an object of unimaginable wealth that exacts a steep toll from those who attempt to claim it. Several documented encounters illustrate the danger of venturing too far. One experienced hiker reported descending into a deep shaft with a small group, equipped with headlamps and ropes. Halfway down, the group noticed that their lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls. A member of the party froze, staring as a figure emerged from the stone itself, crawling in unnatural contortions toward them. The group fled in terror, only to find that the mine's exit had shifted, the familiar path now replaced with jagged rock and dead ends. They barely escaped, claiming afterward that they had glimpsed something not of this world, a being that moved between dimensions rather than tunnels. The mine's reputation extends beyond human witnesses. Animals brought near the entrance often act erratically, refusing to enter or becoming violently agitated if forced closer. Birds will circle above, screaming and diving in patterns that mimic frantic signals, while desert mammals avoid the area entirely. Paranormal investigators interpret this as evidence that the mine emits an energy or presence that disturbs living creatures, not just humans. Over the years, many attempts have been made to explore the lower levels of Mammoth Mine, but most end in failure or unexplained disappearance. Tools vanish without explanation, ropes fray mysteriously, and those who remain too long report hearing voices that echo their deepest fears. Some explorers claim to feel hands brush against them, gentle at first, then increasingly aggressive, as though the mine itself tests the resolve of intruders. Cameras set in the depths often record inexplicable phenomena, shadows detaching from the walls, glowing lights moving against gravity, and indistinct forms that seem to approach, only to dissolve into nothing. Despite or, perhaps, because of its dangers, the mine continues to attract thrill-seekers and treasure hunters. Many are drawn by the prospect of the lost Dutchman's gold, while others come to confront the supernatural, hoping to witness the inexplicable firsthand. Yet, the consensus among experienced guides is clear. Mammoth Mine is not a place to explore lightly. It is a site where history, legend, and the paranormal converge, and where the curious risk more than injury. They risk encountering a darkness that does not belong to this world. The chilling truth of Mammoth Mine is that it may never reveal all its secrets. Every sound, shadow, and unexplained movement hints at something deeper, something that defies explanation. The mine's tunnels stretch endlessly into darkness, and the stories of those who venture too far suggest that it is far more than abandoned rock and timber. They suggest a conduit, a passage that connects history to myth, the living to the dead, and perhaps even this world to another entirely. For those who stand at the entrance, gazing into the yawning darkness of the shafts, the warning is clear. The deeper you go, the colder it gets. The screams, the shapes, the whispers, all are reminders that Mammoth Mine is not simply a relic of Arizona's mining past. It is a cursed place, a threshold between reality and the unknown. And the further one ventures, the more one realizes that some treasures come at a cost far too high to pay. Visitors leave with stories of terror, of shadows that crawl along walls, and of a chill that lingers long after the sun has set, a testament to a mine where the line between the living and the dead is disturbingly thin. Copper Creek Mine, nestled deep within the Galioro Mountains of Arizona, is a place that seems suspended in time. Once a thriving mining site, the mine now sits abandoned in a remote canyon. Its wooden structures rotting, its shafts choked with debris, and the surrounding cliffs scarred from years of labor. What makes Copper Creek Mine infamous, however, is not its decay, but the lingering echoes of a tragic flood that claimed the lives of several miners in the late 19th century. Visitors say that even today, the canyon holds the memory of that disaster, replaying it in ways that defy explanation. Despite decades of arid desert weather, the sound of rushing water can be heard near the mine, a constant, eerie roar that seems to surge through the canyon walls. Those who have explored the area report that the noise comes from no visible stream or creek, and yet it is impossible to ignore. The sound grows louder as one approaches the main entrance of the mine, an auditory mirage of a flood that occurred over a century ago. Hikers describe the effect as almost hypnotic, the relentless sound pulling them toward the tunnels, as if the mine itself is calling for new witnesses to its tragedy. Visitors also report strange apparitions near the site, most often described as drowned men walking uphill from the riverbed. They appear wet, their clothing clinging to their skeletal frames, their faces pale and expressionless. These figures move slowly, deliberately, as though they are trapped in the memory of the flood, unable to comprehend that the world has moved on. Their presence is accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature, an unnatural chill that causes breath to fog and skin to prickle. Those who encounter them speak of a suffocating stillness, an oppressive silence punctuated only by the relentless rush of phantom waters. The drowned miners carry lanterns that emit a strange, flickering blue light, casting shadows that move independently of their bodies. The glow illuminates features frozen in fear, eyes hollow with the terror of their final moments. Some visitors claim that when they attempt to approach, the figures fade into the canyon mist, only to reappear moments later further up the trail. Others recount the haunting sensation of being followed, hearing the splash of wet boots behind them, though when they turn around, no one is there. The blue lanterns remain visible in the distance, bobbing like ghostly beacons against the rock face. The mine's history amplifies its haunted reputation. In 1889, a sudden flood swept through the canyon during a violent monsoon, catching miners off guard as they worked deep inside the tunnels. The force of the water was catastrophic, trapping men in narrow shafts and washing away entire sections of the settlement. Survivors spoke of friends and co-workers carried off by the torrent, their screams echoing through the canyon long after the waters receded. Locals began to avoid the area, calling it cursed, and over time, the mine fell into complete abandonment, leaving only broken tools, rusted carts, and the memories of those who had perished. Paranormal investigators who have explored Copper Creek Mine described experiences that defy logic. Thermal cameras occasionally reveal human shapes emerging from the rock face, crawling along walls and disappearing into shadows. Audio recorders pick up low guttural moans and the unmistakable sound of running water, even when conditions are dry and still. Some claim to have felt hands brush against their shoulders, cold and wet, as if someone or something was trying to pull them into the tunnels. Others report flashes of light from the miners' lanterns, blue and flickering, illuminating the mine in brief, unnatural bursts that leave no evidence behind. Even seasoned hikers report a sense of dread when approaching the mine. Footsteps echo where no one has walked, and the sound of dripping water is amplified as if the canyon itself channels the memory of the flood. Shadows move in peripheral vision, only to vanish when directly observed. Some have experienced nausea, dizziness, or sudden headaches near the mine, sensations often attributed to stress or altitude. Yet they occur too consistently to dismiss entirely. For many, Copper Creek Mine is not merely haunted, it is a place that actively resists intrusion, warning the living to keep their distance. Local folklore adds layers of terror to the site. Stories circulate of miners who, having drowned in the flood, now haunt the canyon to seek justice or simply relive their final moments. Some claim that these spirits are tethered to the physical landscape, appearing only along the paths where the water once surged. Others warn that the blue lanterns are more than symbolics. They are guides for lost souls, illuminating the way for the dead while leading the living into danger. Those who disrespect the site or attempt to take objects from the mine often report misfortune. Tools vanish, cameras fail, and visitors become lost, retracing steps that seem to shift beneath their feet. Many who explore Copper Creek Mine describe the experience as a mixture of fascination and terror. The combination of natural beauty and supernatural menace creates an atmosphere unlike any other. The canyon walls, scarred by decades of mining, rise like silent witnesses to tragedy, while the sounds of water and the glimmer of blue lanterns create an ever-present reminder that the past has not yet released its grip. Some leave with stories to tell, photographs that capture the unexplained, or recordings that defy rational explanation. Others leave shaken, haunted by fleeting glimpses of drowned miners, the echoing roar of the flood, and the sensation of unseen eyes watching their every move. For those who dare to visit, Copper Creek Mine offers a haunting lesson. Some tragedies leave a mark not only on the earth but on the spirits bound to it. The sounds of rushing water, the sight of drowned men moving uphill, and the cold touch of the canyon air are all reminders that this is a place where history, legend, and the supernatural intersect. The mine's tunnels may lie in ruin, but the memories of those lost in the flood endure, replayed endlessly for anyone willing or foolish enough to witness them. The blue lanterns flicker as guides, warnings, or perhaps invitations, a chilling promise that some places, no matter how remote, can never truly be abandoned. Iron King Mine, located near Humboldt, Nevada, is a relic of the state's booming mining past, but it is also a place where the past refuses to remain buried. Once a sprawling operation producing gold and silver, the mine now sits largely abandoned, its buildings weathered by wind and sun, and its shafts darkened by decades of neglect. Yet for those who have spent time near the mine, it is clear that some presence remains, a presence that is neither entirely alive nor fully departed. Former workers and local historians alike speak in hushed tones about the ghostly figure that roams the grounds, a supervisor who never left, even after death. The tales begin with miners themselves. Those who worked late shifts recall a figure appearing out of the shadows, walking among the equipment, inspecting the workers as if the mine was still operational. Initially, the figure seemed solid, a man in a tattered coat and hat, holding a clipboard or lantern. But upon closer observation, something is unsettling. His feet never touch the ground. He glides over dirt and gravel, the boards of the wooden walkways, as if supported by some unseen force. His face is often described as pale and stern, features frozen in concentration, yet somehow distant, aware of both the living and the dead. The ghostly supervisor is not merely a figure to be observed from afar. Numerous accounts tell of him approaching workers, pausing to scrutinize their tasks before vanishing without a trace. The air around him reportedly chills, and the faint scent of coal, oil, and dust lingers when he passes. Some miners have recounted hearing the clatter of tools or the scrape of boots along wooden floors just before glimpsing him. The figure does not speak, yet his presence communicates authority and vigilance, as though the mine's operations continue beyond the constraints of life itself. Even more unnerving are the whispered voices that haunt the tunnels during late shifts. Miners report hearing their names called, accurately, in the voices of coworkers who have long since died. Sometimes the whispers are urgent, warning of danger ahead, and other times they are mournful, almost conversational, recalling memories of shared workdays, accidents narrowly avoided, or tragedies endured together. It is impossible to determine where the voices originate. They seem to move with the listener, appearing from empty corridors or deep within the mine shafts. Many miners describe a sense of both recognition and fear, comforted that familiar voices linger, yet terrified that they come from beyond the grave. One former worker, who spent decades at Iron King Mine, recounted an evening when he was alone, checking the pumps in the deepest shaft. He heard his name called in a soft, familiar voice, and when he turned, there was no one. Moments later, the ghostly supervisor appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes fixed on him. The worker froze, unable to move, feeling an oppressive weight in the air. The supervisor simply watched for a few seconds, then glided backward into the shadows, disappearing as though he had never been there. The experience left the miner shaken, yet he returned to work the following day, reluctant to speak of it, lest he be thought superstitious. Paranormal investigators who have visited the site report phenomena that suggest a persistent, active presence. Cameras capture faint silhouettes gliding over walkways, shadows that behave independently from light sources, and sudden temperature drops in isolated sections of the mine. Audio equipment records low murmurs, occasionally interrupted by a clear whisper of a name. Unmistakably human, yet not of the living. Motion sensors sometimes trigger without cause, as if the ghostly supervisor or his deceased subordinates are moving through the corridors, still performing their duties in an eternal shift. Visitors note that the mine itself seems to respond to attention. Tools left in one place may be found elsewhere, chains rattling without wind, and doors creaking as though an invisible hand had moved them. Some have claimed that the supervisor ensures order even in death, correcting disorganized equipment or returning objects to their proper places. There is a sense that the mine continues to operate on a schedule only the ghosts understand, and those who intrude risk crossing unseen boundaries. The atmosphere at Iron King Mine is heavy with history and memory. The mine's rise and fall, the labor and hardships of its workers, and the tragedies of accidents and early deaths have all left traces that some claim remain embedded in the structure itself. The ghostly supervisor embodies this lingering past, the meticulous attention to detail, the authority over workers, and the solemn presence that watches over both living and dead. The whispers of deceased miners serve as a reminder that the bonds formed in life do not always end with death, and that the mine has become a liminal space, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is porous. Even those who do not witness the apparitions report an unsettling unease. The mine exerts a pull, a magnetic sense of attention that cannot be rationalized. Explorers describe feeling eyes upon them, a gaze that measures work, behavior, and intention. Shadows flicker in the corners of vision, and the faint sound of footsteps can be heard on dusty floors where no one walks. The blue-gray light of dusk deepens the eeriness, highlighting rusted railings, sagging beams, and the empty office where the supervisor is said to have once held court. Iron King Mine stands as a testament not only to Nevada's mining history, but to the endurance of memory and spirit. The ghostly supervisor and the whispered voices of long-dead miners are more than legends. They are a living, persistent reminder of the lives spent in labor, of the dangers endured, and of the connections that transcend mortality. Visitors leave with stories of gliding figures, chilling whispers, and the unnerving sense that, somewhere in the mine, someone is still watching, ensuring that the work continues, and that the past is never truly left behind. Copper Creek Shaft No. 3, located in the rugged hills of Arizona, is one of the most infamous relics of early mining disasters. In 1914, the shaft collapsed suddenly, sealing an entire crew of miners inside. The catastrophe claimed numerous lives, leaving the site abandoned and shrouded in tragedy. Over the decades, the shaft has become a destination, not for profit, but for those drawn to the eerie and unexplained. Visitors and explorers often report experiences that defy reason, as though the mine itself refuses to let go of the memories trapped in its darkness. The collapse of Shaft No. 3 was swift and brutal. Contemporary accounts describe the ground giving way beneath the men, timber supports snapping like brittle bones, and the roar of earth swallowing the shaft echoing through the hills. Rescue efforts were immediate but futile. The miners were trapped under tons of rock and timber, their cries muffled and fading into the void. Local newspapers documented the disaster, but the names and stories of the men were quickly reduced to lists of the dead. Families grieved in silence, and the shaft was abandoned, left to decay and fade into legend. Explorers who visit Copper Creek Shaft No. 3 today often remark on a chilling atmosphere that seems to settle over the area even before entering the mouth of the mine. The air is heavy and damp, carrying the faint scent of rusted metal and old timber. Rocks underfoot seem to shift unnaturally, and the silence of the surrounding hills amplifies even the smallest sound. But the most persistent and disturbing phenomenon is the rhythmic tapping on metal. Visitors describe it as faint at first, a soft metallic echo that seems distant, yet deliberate and precise. The tapping is usually heard deep inside the tunnels, beyond the areas where sunlight reaches. Explorers report that the sound travels in patterns, like footsteps or hammering, but with no apparent source. Some theorize that the sound is the settling of old supports, or the echo of distant rockfalls. But those familiar with the mine insist that the rhythm is too consistent, too intentional, to be explained by natural causes. The tapping is described as sharp, metallic, and almost conversational, as if the trapped miners are attempting to communicate, repeating messages across the void of time. What makes the phenomenon more unnerving is its reaction to light. Observers consistently report that the tapping ceases the moment a flashlight or headlamp illuminates the area from which it originates. It resumes only once darkness returns. Some explorers interpret this as a sign that the spirits, or whatever force inhabits the shaft, are sensitive to observation, preferring to remain hidden in the shadows. Others describe a sense of being watched, as though shining a light temporarily interrupts the presence but does not dispel it. The behavior creates a disorienting cycle. The more one tries to investigate, the less one is able to confirm the source. leaving only an eerie memory of sound and anticipation. Witnesses often describe the psychological impact of the shaft as profound. Even experienced spelunkers report a rising sense of unease when approaching the deepest tunnels. The walls, coated in dust and rust, seem to press inward, and the faint echo of the tapping reverberates through the skull. Some claim to hear whispers between taps, fragmented words or names, though never clearly enough to understand. Others speak of sudden chills, the temperature dropping inexplicably as they venture further, intensifying the sensation that the mind is alive, aware, and reacting to intruders. There are also tales of fleeting apparitions near the collapsed sections of the shaft. Some explorers claim to see shadows moving behind rock formations, glimpses of figures crouched or reaching upward from debris. Others have reported seeing lantern-like glows deep within the mine, blue or amber flickers that vanish the instant a light is focused on them. Thermal cameras sometimes register forms in areas where no one can possibly stand, moving against gravity or through solid rock. These sightings, paired with the rhythmic tapping, have led some to conclude that the miners' spirits remain trapped, repeating their last moments in an endless loop of work, panic, and fear. Local folklore adds to the mine's reputation. Stories circulated for decades about men who heard tapping outside the shaft at night, long after the collapse, as if the miners were attempting to reach the surface or warn the living of danger. Some claim that those who disrespect the site entering without care, removing artifacts, or disturbing debris experience bad luck or even inexplicable accidents. Guides who take visitors near the mine often emphasize caution, not merely for safety, but out of respect, claiming that the spirits of shaft know 3 are restless, and that curiosity can provoke their attention. Even modern investigators report unusual phenomena. Audio equipment records distinct tapping patterns, seemingly unconnected to the movements of wind or settling rock. Motion sensors sometimes trigger without any visible cause, and long-exposure photographs reveal streaks or shapes where no one stands. Paranormal enthusiasts who visit the mine are often struck by the consistency of these reports across decades. Testimonies from miners, hikers, and researchers alike confirm that Copper Creek Shaft No. 3 retains a presence that defies logical explanation. Visitors describe leaving the mine with a lingering sense of the past, as though they carry part of the shaft's memory with them. The rhythmic tapping, the sudden silence when illuminated, and the spectral suggestions of trapped miners imprint themselves on the mind long after one has returned to the surface. Even under the bright Arizona sun, the memory of darkness, pressure, and the subtle metallic rhythm remains, a haunting echo of a disaster that refuses to be forgotten. Copper Creek Shaft No. 3 is not just a historical site. It is a monument to tragedy, a space where time seems to loop back on itself, and where the line between the living and the dead is fragile. Those who venture into its tunnels risk more than darkness. They risk experiencing a persistent, almost sentient memory of loss. The mine's collapsed walls may be silent most of the day, but beneath the surface, in the shadows beyond the reach of light, the tapping continues, echoing a century-old tragedy, and reminding all who enter that some events leave marks that not even time can erase. Hillside Mine, located in the rugged terrain of Yavapai County, Arizona, is more than an abandoned mine. It is a place where the boundary between the natural and the inexplicable seems to blur. Once a bustling site of prospectors and miners searching for silver and gold, the mine has long been deserted, its shafts choked with debris and the skeletal remains of old equipment. Yet, despite decades of neglect, the area continues to attract visitors, curious hikers, ghost hunters, and campers drawn, not by treasure, but by reports of strange, otherworldly activity that persists long after the mine's closure. One of the most frequently reported phenomena occurs at sunset. Locals tell of the ground around the mine glowing faintly, a soft luminescence that seems to come from beneath the earth itself. The glow is subtle at first, like the afterlight of a dying fire, but it grows more pronounced as the sun dips below the horizon. Hikers passing through the area describe the effect as hypnotic. The barren, dusty landscape takes on an almost ethereal quality, with rocks and sand bathed in a warm, unnatural light. The glow appears to follow the contours of the land, highlighting ridges and depressions, almost as if the earth itself were breathing. Those who camp near Hillside Mine often report experiences far stranger than visual anomalies. Many awaken in the middle of the night to find handprints pressed into the sand beside them. What is particularly unsettling is that these handprints are sometimes still warm, as if they were made moments before. The impressions vary in size, sometimes large, sometimes small, but always precise, as if carefully placed rather than the result of casual wandering. Campers have described a feeling of being watched, a presence that lingers just beyond the reach of their flashlights, accompanied by the faint rustle of movement in the dry brush. Attempts to rationalize these occurrences often fall short. There are no trees or bushes tall enough to account for sudden shadows, no wind patterns that could explain footprints appearing near sleeping campers, and no wildlife in the area known to leave hand-like impressions. Yet the patterns persist, repeated night after night by those who choose to stay near the mine. Many describe an uneasy sensation, as if unseen eyes track their every movement, and some report hearing faint whispers or murmurs, just at the edge of perception. The voices are indistinct, but they carry the cadence of conversation, sometimes broken, sometimes urgent, as if trying to communicate across a divide that cannot be crossed. Hikers and explorers who venture into the mine's tunnels often speak of sudden chills and shifting shadows. Even in the heat of the Arizona desert, the interior of Hillside Mine can feel unnaturally cold, the temperature dropping as one moves deeper into the shafts. Some claim to see faint glimmers of light reflected off the walls, lights that vanish when approached. Others recount the sensation of hands brushing against their shoulders or arms in the dark, only to find nothing upon turning. It is as if the mine itself is aware of intruders, reacting to their presence with subtle but unmistakable signs. Paranormal investigators have attempted to document the phenomena at Hillside Mine, employing thermal cameras, motion detectors, and audio recorders. Many capture inexplicable anomalies, small flashes of light in the shafts, shapes moving across thermal imaging where no one is present, and low-frequency sounds that resemble footsteps or tapping. Audio equipment often records faint, indecipherable whispers or voices, sometimes repeating the names of the investigators themselves. These findings reinforce the growing consensus that Hillside Mine is not merely a relic of mining history, but a locus of residual energy, a site where past and present seem to coexist in ways that defy logic. Local folklore provides possible explanations for these occurrences. Some believe that the glowing ground at sunset marks the resting place of miners who perished in the mine long ago, their spirits trapped between the rocks and sand. Others suggest that the handprints are gestures of recognition, an acknowledgement of those who dare to enter their territory. Legends speak of a miner who died in the shafts and whose presence remained tied to the land, wandering in search of companions, unable to leave the place that consumed his life. Whether these stories are based in fact or are simply cautionary tales passed down through generations, they lend a chilling weight to the experiences of those who camp near the mine. Occasionally, visitors report more vivid encounters. Campers have described seeing shadowy figures moving along the ridges at sunset, silhouetted against the glowing earth, pausing and watching before vanishing into the darkness. Some speak of hearing faint scraping or hammering from within the mine, echoes of work long ceased, or glimpses of figures climbing ladders or inspecting rusted equipment as if the mine were still operational. Even from a distance, the atmosphere is oppressive, charged with an energy that seems to thrum beneath the surface. Despite the unsettling experiences, people continue to visit Hillside Mine. The allure of the unexplained draws many, from photographers hoping to capture the glow at sunset, to paranormal enthusiasts seeking proof of the supernatural. Yet all who spend the night are unanimous in their caution. The mine is alive in ways that are difficult to define, and the handprints, the glow, and the whispers are reminders that the land remembers. The experience leaves a lasting impression, a mix of awe and unease, an understanding that some places carry the weight of history, not only in memory, but in active presence. Hillside Mine is not simply a ghost town relic. It is a place where time folds, where the labor and lives of past miners linger in subtle, unnerving ways. The glowing ground at sunset, the warm handprints in the sand, and the shadowed figures glimpsed along ridges all serve as reminders that some places are marked by events that refuse to fade. Visitors leave with stories, photographs, and lingering sensations. But they also leave with the knowledge that Hillside Mine is a threshold, a location where the past is tangible and the spirits of those who lived and died there continue to roam, waiting silently beneath the glowing earth. Planet Mine, situated near the banks of the Colorado River in La Paz County, Arizona, is a forgotten relic of the mining boom. Its tunnels and shafts, long abandoned but far from lifeless. Once a modest operation extracting silver and small veins of gold, the mine now rests in silence. Yet it is a silence that is often broken by inexplicable phenomena. Locals, fishermen, and explorers alike speak of lights, glowing orbs that rise from the earth, drift silently through the night, and vanish without a trace. These lights have become the mine's signature haunting, drawing curiosity, fear, and fascination from all who witness them. The origins of Planet Mine date back to the late 1800s, when small groups of miners settled along the river to take advantage of nearby resources. Working conditions were treacherous. Sudden storms and flash floods from the Colorado River were constant threats, and several miners lost their lives in these unpredictable surges of water. Over time, as veins ran dry and the risk outweighed the reward, the mine was abandoned. Yet the memory of those who died seems to linger in ways that defy natural explanation, taking the form of the eerie lights that have made the site notorious among locals. Fishermen along the river are often the first to witness these orbs. At dusk, when the sky fades to shades of deep orange and purple, small, glowing spheres are said to emerge from the ground near the mine. They rise slowly, almost gracefully, and hover above the desert floor. Witnesses describe the glow as soft and ethereal, like a candle reflected through fog, and the orbs are always silent, their presence marked only by the light they emit. They drift along the same paths, appearing as if guided by unseen hands, and vanish suddenly when approached or when anyone attempts to shine a flashlight on them. Those who have observed the lights often associate them with the miners who perished in flash floods over a century ago. Local legend suggests that each orb marks a grave, a point of remembrance where the miner's life ended suddenly beneath rushing water. Fishermen and hikers who have seen the lights say that looking directly at them evokes a mixture of awe and unease, as though they are witnessing a tether between the living and the dead. The orbs are said to drift in patterns reminiscent of human movement, rising, pausing, and sometimes circling, as though performing tasks that no living person can see. Explorers who venture closer to Planet Mine report additional phenomena. The mine itself is riddled with collapsed shafts and rusted equipment, yet some swear they see flashes of light deep inside, reflected from surfaces that should be dark for decades. Shadows move independently of natural light, and the air often carries an unusual chill, particularly near the areas where the orbs appear. Some visitors describe hearing faint sounds, water dripping, soft thuds, or the distant echo of rushing currency van when the Colorado River is still and calm. These sounds, combined with the floating lights, create a sense of a world caught between the living and the dead, a place where time itself feels distorted. One fisherman recounted a particularly unsettling encounter. While casting nets near the riverbank, he noticed a small group of orbs rising in unison from a patch of desert sand near the mine entrance. They hovered silently for several minutes, rotating and shifting in perfect synchronization, before disappearing in a sudden, almost violent flicker. Moments later, the water nearby surged slightly, as though the river itself acknowledged the presence of the dead. The man claimed he felt watched for the remainder of the night, an awareness that was unseen but palpable, lingering until dawn. Thermal and night vision cameras have occasionally captured unexplained phenomena at Planet Mine. Footage sometimes reveals faint glowing shapes rising from the ground, appearing momentarily before dissolving into the darkness. Audio equipment picks up low-frequency hums or echoes of rushing water, even when the river is calm. These recordings, while inconclusive, have convinced some paranormal investigators that the mine is a site of residual energy, a location where the trauma and death of the past have left a lasting imprint on the land itself. The orbs also seem to possess an intelligence, subtle yet unmistakable. Witnesses note that the lights respond to the presence of humans. They hesitate, drift further away, or vanish completely when approached directly. Some interpret this as a protective measure, a way for the spirits to remain unseen, while others believe the lights are drawing attention to the mine's history, a visual record of lives lost in a single, catastrophic moment and glowing faintly in the early morning light, as though the orbs had briefly touched the ground while observing the living. Local folklore reinforces the mystery of Planet Mine. Stories are passed down of miners who drowned during flash floods and whose spirits are unable to leave the land that claimed them. Families of the deceased maintained that the lights were signs of remembrance, manifestations of unresolved energy, or even guardians watching over the living to prevent similar accidents. Some say that seeing the orbs is a blessing, a rare glimpse into a world normally hidden, while others warn that disrespecting the site can draw misfortune, from sudden illness to accidents near the river. Even those who merely pass by the mine report an ineffable sensation of awareness. Hikers describe a sudden feeling of being observed, an energy that seems to ripple through the ground, coinciding with the occasional flicker of a light in the distance. The glow is subtle yet persistent, and those who take the time to watch often leave with a profound sense that Planet Mine is not empty, that the lives lost here continue to leave their mark, guiding, observing, or perhaps mourning. Planet Mine endures as a haunting symbol of Arizona's mining past. The glowing orbs, the lingering whispers of water, and the shadows that drift across the desert floor are more than folklore. They are reminders of the lives lost in sudden catastrophe, and the power of memory too. Linger long after death. Visitors leave with photographs, stories, and an indelible sense of mystery, aware that Planet Mine is a place where the living brush against the echoes of the dead, and where the past continues to shine in subtle, spectral light. Verde Combination Mine, perched in the hills of Jerome, Arizona, is one of the most infamous remnants of the town's mining heyday, and a place where the weight of history seems almost tangible. Jerome, once known as the wickedest town in the West, was a booming mining settlement filled with wealth, danger, and tragedy. Among its many abandoned shafts and crumbling structures, Verde Combination Mine stands out, not only for its size and complexity, but for the spectral activity that has been reported there for decades. Visitors and locals alike speak in hushed tones of a dark presence that haunts one particular shaft, a shadow forever climbing yet never reaching the top. The mine's history is marked by danger from the very beginning. Mining in Jerome was notoriously treacherous, with unstable tunnels, shifting rock, and sudden drops that could claim a man's life in an instant. Verde Combination Mine was no exception. In the early 20th century, a man fell hundreds of feet while inspecting one of the deepest shafts. The fall was witnessed by several fellow miners, but there was nothing anyone could do. The drop was fatal, and his body was never fully recovered. The tragedy left an indelible mark on those who survived, and over time, stories began to circulate about a dark presence that never left the mine. Today, those who approach the shaft often describe an oppressive feeling, a sense of being watched by something that is not entirely human. The area around the mine is quiet in a way that is almost unnatural. Birds avoid the cliffs, and even the wind seems hesitant, muffled by the rocks. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature near the mouth of the shaft, and an unmistakable heaviness in the air. Some have experienced dizziness, vertigo, or a subtle sense of disorientation, as if the mine itself is bending perception, warning intruders to stay away. The most persistent and terrifying reports come from the shaft where the man fell. Locals and explorers alike have claimed to see a dark shadow climbing endlessly up the walls. Its form vaguely human, but elongated and indistinct, moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The figure never reaches the top of the shaft. No matter how long it climbs, it is always ascending, eternally trapped in the vertical tunnel. Some describe the shadow as featureless, a void against a rock, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Others see faint outlines of a human shape, shoulders hunched and hands gripping the walls, yet lacking the solidity or substance of a living person. Those who have spent time near the shaft often report hearing sounds that defy explanation. There is a scraping or clanging, like rock or metal being shifted, accompanied by the subtle hiss of falling dust. Sometimes, a low groan echoes upward, reminiscent of a man struggling against impossible weight. Explorers who attempt to follow the shadow down into the mine or peer into its depths often describe an overwhelming sense of vertigo, a sensation that the darkness itself is pulling them in, urging them to retreat before curiosity leads to disaster. Even experienced spelunkers and miners report an instinctive unease, a primal recognition that the shaft is no longer a space for the living. The shadow is not the only phenomenon reported at Verde Combination Mine. Visitors frequently mention cold spots, sudden gusts of wind that come from no discernible source, and fleeting glimpses of figures at the edges of vision. Sometimes, a faint light appears deep within the tunnels, glowing and shifting as if carried by an unseen hand. Audio recordings have captured low murmurs, distant thuds, and metallic scraping, none of which can be traced to natural causes. These occurrences combine to create an atmosphere that is both mesmerizing and terrifying, a place where the line between the living and the dead is perilously thin. Local folklore offers possible explanations for the shadow. Some believe it is the restless spirit of the man who fell, doomed to climb forever in a vain attempt to escape the fate that claimed him. Others suggest it represents the accumulation of grief, fear, and labor from the countless miners who worked and died in Jerome's treacherous shafts. A manifestation of collective trauma embedded in the very rock. Whatever the origin, the shadow has become a symbol of the mine itself, a reminder that Jerome's wealth came at a cost, and that some deaths leave a permanent imprint on the land. Explorers who attempt to document the shadow describe mixed experiences. Cameras often fail to capture the figure, though thermal imaging sometimes reveals heat signatures rising along the shaft where no living person can stand. Flashlights and lanterns are reported to flicker inexplicably when the shadow is present, and even digital recording devices occasionally malfunction. Some visitors report a subtle but persistent feeling of being followed, a sensation that their movements are being mirrored or anticipated by an unseen force. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena makes Verde Combination Mine one of the most unnerving sights in Jerome. Even from a distance, the mine exudes an unsettling energy. The cliffs surrounding the shaft cast long shadows at sunset, and hikers have reported seeing a dark figure climbing along the walls in the fading light, only for it to vanish completely when they approach. Campers nearby occasionally hear faint footsteps or soft scraping, always coming from the direction of the shaft, reinforcing the impression that the mine itself is alive, or at least occupied by something beyond the living. The experience leaves a lingering sense of dread, a reminder that some places hold memories too powerful to fade. Verde Combination Mine is more than a relic of mining history. It is a monument to tragedy, a site where human ambition collided with the unforgiving forces of nature, leaving behind an imprint that endures. The shadow climbing endlessly up the shaft serves as a constant reminder that some deaths cannot be reconciled, that the mine continues to echo with labor, fear, and loss. Visitors leave with photographs, recordings, and stories, but they also leave with an inescapable awareness that the mine is a threshold, a liminal space where the dead continue to act out their final moments. And the line between the living and the spectral is thin and fragile. In Jerome, a town full of ghost stories, Verde Combination Mine stands apart. The dark shadow climbing endlessly up the shaft is not merely a legend, but a presence, a reminder of mortality, danger, and the persistence of memory. Those who witness it feel a chilling sense of time suspended, as though they are glimpsing a moment that repeats eternally, just beyond the reach of the living. It is a warning, a spectacle, and a haunting all at once, encapsulating the enduring mysteries of Jerome's haunted past. Montezuma Mine, located in Santa Cruz County, Arizona, is a place steeped in both history and legend. Once a bustling mining operation extracting silver and copper, the mine has long since been abandoned, its tunnels choked with debris and rusted equipment. Yet it remains alive in local folklore. Miners who once worked its shafts spoke in hushed tones about a figure they called the Crying Girl, a spirit whose appearance seemed to foreshadow disaster. Stories about her linger in the county, as vivid today as they were over a century ago. A reminder that the past has a way of reaching forward into the present. The earliest accounts of the Crying Girl came from miners who labored in the lower tunnels of Montezuma Mine. According to these workers, she would appear unexpectedly, standing beside a wall or sitting near a crossbeam, her figure faintly illuminated by the flickering light of lanterns. Her face was described as pale, tear-streaked, and impossibly young, yet her eyes held a depth of sorrow that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She never spoke, yet her presence was heavy with emotion, and miners claimed they could feel her grief saturate the air, chilling them despite the warmth of the desert above. What made encounters with her particularly frightening was the pattern that followed. Those who saw the Crying Girl often experienced tragedy shortly afterward. Accidents, cave-ins, or falls would occur hours after her appearance, and the miners began to associate her presence with impending death. Some workers reported hearing faint weeping echoing through the tunnels long after she vanished, as though the sorrow itself lingered in the walls. Over time, her reputation spread, and miners would warn newcomers to be wary if they glimpsed her figure, treating her as both a ghost and a grim omen. The descriptions of her were remarkably consistent. Miners said she wore a tattered dress, dirt stained from the shafts, and her hair fell loosely around her shoulders, tangled and damp as if she had been crying for days. Her small hands often clutched at the walls, leaving faint smudges on the rock. Some claimed that when she appeared, the air grew thick and oppressive, carrying a scent of damp earth and smoke. Those who encountered her spoke of a sense of inevitability, a feeling that death was drawing near and that nothing could be done to stop it. Even the most seasoned miners, men accustomed to danger and hardship, admitted to feeling paralyzed with fear at the sight of her. Over the decades, tales of the Crying Girl became part of Montezuma Mine's identity. Miners would recount the story during breaks, sharing whispered warnings about the spectral girl whose grief could not be ignored. Some claimed to see her only fleetingly, a shadow on a wall or a reflection in a puddle of water. Others swore they had watched her weep for minutes at a time, her tears leaving faint streaks on stone, as though marking the mine itself with sorrow. The superstition grew, and many workers believed that avoiding the areas where she was seen might spare them from harm, though this precaution was never a guarantee. The final and most dramatic encounter occurred shortly before the mine's permanent closure. Miners working in the lower shafts reported seeing the Crying Girl near one of the deepest tunnels. She appeared pale and trembling, her weeping audible despite the distance. Several hours later, a fire erupted in the shaft, quickly spreading through the wooden supports. Smoke filled the tunnels, and the blaze sealed the mine completely. Rescue attempts were impossible, and the remaining workers were forced to flee. No one survived in that section, and the tunnel has remained closed ever since, its entrance blocked by debris and fire damage. Witnesses insist that the sighting of the Crying Girl was a harbinger, just as, in years past, a warning unheeded or unavoidable. Paranormal enthusiasts who visit the perimeter of Montezuma Mine report experiences that echo the old stories. Many claim to feel sudden drops in temperature near the collapsed shafts, as though the air itself carries the memory of the fire and the trapped miners. Some hear soft weeping when the wind is still, faint but unmistakable, echoing from within the sealed tunnels. Others describe fleeting glimpses of a young girl in the distance, appearing only for a moment before disappearing, her figure indistinct but unmistakably human. Campers and hikers in the surrounding area often report an uneasy sensation, as though invisible eyes are watching, reminding them that some histories are never fully buried. Audio recordings and night vision footage sometimes capture phenomena that reinforce the legend. Low cries and muffled sobs appear on tape, impossible to attribute to wildlife or wind. Shadowy shapes flicker across the edges of camera lenses, and unexplained heat signatures have been recorded near the sealed shafts. Investigators and enthusiasts alike find it difficult to reconcile these occurrences with natural explanations, and many accept that Montezuma Mine is a place where grief and tragedy have left a persistent mark, manifested in the form of the crying girl. The legend continues to influence the area. Locals warn visitors to respect the land and remain aware of this. They tell stories around campfires, emphasizing that the crying girl is not a malicious spirit in the traditional sense, but one bound to the mine by sorrow and tragedy. Her presence is a reminder of the lives lost, the dangers of mining, and the power of memory to linger long after the last lantern is extinguished. Montezuma Mine, though closed and sealed, is far from forgotten. The tale of the crying girl serves as both a warning and a memorial, preserving the mine's history in spectral form. For those who catch even a glimpse of her, it is a haunting encounter, a chilling reminder that some tragedies leave marks that time cannot erase. The fire may have claimed the shaft, but it did not silence her. The crying girl continues to weep, an eternal sentinel of sorrow and a ghostly herald of the mine's enduring darkness. Kingman Ghost Mine, tucked deep in the arid expanse of the Mojave Desert, is a place that has long captivated locals, adventurers, and paranormal enthusiasts. Far from roads, towns, or any sign of civilization, the mine is concealed among jagged hills and desert scrub. Its entrance marked only by rusted timbers and partially collapsed stonework. The site was once a modest gold and copper operation in the early 1900s, but like so many mines of the era, it was abandoned after a series of accidents and dwindling yields. What makes Kingman Ghost Mine unique, however, is not its history of labor or poverty, is the unexplainable phenomena reported by those who dare to approach it. Visitors often speak first of the mine's strange acoustic qualities. Even when the desert is still and silent, campers describe hearing a low, persistent hum emanating from beneath the ground. The vibrations are deep and mechanical in nature, a sound that feels as though it could shake the very bones of anyone standing nearby. Yet there is no equipment, no machinery, and no underground river to account for it. Some compare it to the distant rumble of a massive engine, while others describe it as the resonance of stone itself, thrumming with unseen energy. The hum is almost hypnotic, a vibration that seems to pull the listener toward the mine, urging them to investigate despite an instinctive sense of danger. On nights when the moon is high, hikers and campers report seeing flickering lights within the shafts, glowing faintly like lanterns carried by invisible hands. The lights move, appear, and vanish unpredictably, illuminating the walls of the tunnels in ghostly washes of orange and white. Occasionally, the vibrations are accompanied by subtle shadows, dancing at the edges of vision, just beyond the reach of flashlights. Those who venture too close often experience sudden chills, a sense of being watched, and sometimes a pressure in the chest, as if the earth itself is pressing down. The most remarkable account of Kingman Ghost Mine comes from a professional paranormal investigation team that set up camp near the entrance. Using a combination of audio recording devices, thermal cameras, and electromagnetic sensors, they hoped to capture evidence of the unexplained hum and any other anomalies. Late at night, the team reported hearing chanting, a low rhythmic series of sounds in a language no one could identify. It was not like chanting at a temple or any human ritual they had studied. It was guttural, strange, and resonant, echoing through the tunnels and out into the desert air. The sounds seemed to come from the very walls, a chorus of voices embedded in stone. The team felt the vibrations intensify as the chanting grew louder, and a palpable sense of dread filled the campsite. When dawn arrived, the investigators were shaken but initially relieved that nothing more had occurred. They left their equipment running while they hiked away for a brief survey of the surrounding area. Upon returning to their campsite just hours later, they found it obliterated. Tents had been torn apart, supplies scattered and broken, and the ground itself was scorched in patches. Most disturbingly, their electronic gear, including audio recorders and thermal cameras, was melted beyond recognition. Their casings warped and wires fused as though exposed to intense heat. The team later confirmed that no natural fire, lightning strike, or electrical malfunction could account for the damage. Even seasoned desert explorers who heard the story were unsettled, agreeing that the mine seemed to possess an energy both intelligent and dangerous. Local folklore supports the idea that Kingman Ghost Mine is a site of persistent supernatural activity. Miners who once worked in the Mojave Desert claimed that the earth itself around the mine was restless. Some told stories of strange vibrations beneath their feet, of lights that appeared inside the shafts without lanterns, and of shadows that moved independently of anyone present. Several miners were reportedly driven from the mine after experiencing inexplicable incidents, including sudden falls, hallucinations, and acute sensations of fear. Some said that these events were warnings. Others believed them to be curses triggered by greed or disrespect of the land. Those who camp nearby today often speak of the desert taking on an otherworldly quality. At night, the wind carries an unnatural resonance, echoing as if it is amplified by hidden chambers below the surface. Animals avoid the immediate vicinity. Birds do not perch on the cliffs near the entrance, and small mammals vanish from the area entirely. Campers describe sudden flashes of light in the distance, often synchronized with the hum and the chanting. And some claim to hear faint whispers or unintelligible words carried on the breeze. There is a sense that the mine is alive, aware of intruders, and capable of responding to human presence in ways that defy explanation. Attempts to document the activity have yielded mixed results. Audio recordings sometimes capture the hum or faint chanting, though the playback is distorted and metallic, with patterns that seem too regular to be entirely random. Thermal cameras occasionally detect shapes moving deep inside the shafts, forms that cannot be identified as human or animal. EMF sensors spike unpredictably, often coinciding with the hum or movement, creating a sense that unseen forces are testing or interacting with observers. Despite the danger, Kingman Ghost Mine continues to attract explorers, photographers, and paranormal enthusiasts. Many are drawn by the challenge, others by the hope of capturing evidence of the supernatural. Yet even the bravest report a growing unease, a recognition that the site is more than abandoned rock and rusted timbers. There is an intelligence present, a lingering memory of labor, tragedy, or something older, that seems to permeate the ground and air. Visitors leave with stories, photographs, or audio files, but the memory of the vibrations, the chanting, and the destroyed equipment lingers far longer, a warning of forces beyond comprehension. Kingman Ghost Mine stands as a testament to the power of the unexplained. It is a place where history, tragedy, and perhaps the supernatural converge, where the earth itself hums with an energy no one can fully understand. The glowing shafts, the deep mechanical vibrations, and the chanting of unknown origin remind all who venture near that some places are not merely abandoned. They are alive, aware, and capable of leaving an indelible mark on those who dare to trespass. For those who enter its shadowed corridors, the desert does not offer safety. It offers a warning that echoes long after the final light has faded. As the Arizona sun sets, the desert seems quiet, but the ground remembers. Every tunnel, every rock, every breath of cold air carries a whisper from the dead. The miners who built Arizona's fortunes never truly left. They're still working, still searching, still warning. So if you ever wander near a rusted mine entrance at night and hear the soft ring of metal on stone, don't look inside. Just walk away, before the mine remembers your name too. Thank you for joining me, traveler of the unknown. If you enjoyed tonight's descent into the haunted depths, make sure to leave a light burning and subscribe, so you'll never miss the next shadow that calls your name. Until next time, keep your lamp close and your soul closer.